Welcome to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where two bearded film fans watch the best and worst horror movies ever and talk about them. My name is Ben Errington, and I'm joined by a very special returning guest who has kindly stepped in as co-host due to the rude absence of regular hosts, Luke and Andy. He's a friend of the show and writer of weird horror and sci-fi, co-host of a Nice Chianti podcast. Please welcome Mr. John Crinan.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Yes,
Hello.
I was surprised to hear a Nice Chianti. Me and Zoe haven't recorded a Chianti for quite a while. We've been talking about it, but we haven't done it yet just because we've both been so busy. But yeah, I'll always wear Chianti very proudly, even though I think we've only put out a couple of episodes, very drunken episodes.
Still counts. And just keep everybody waiting and wanting. You know, don't want to give them too much.
Yeah, that's our entire plan.
Take you for granted, and then fire them out as a surprise. Bang.
Yeah, I've got two episodes. I've got two unreleased Chianti episodes sitting on a hard drive. They may never see the light of day, but I'm just going to tease them a little bit there. God. So there you go.
Like
you can hit me up on social media if you want to see them.
Oh. Like unreleased Prince songs that someone's got somewhere on a hard drive.
Yeah, they're in a vault somewhere. They're actually in Prince's vault. They're not.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to get a hold of them. I'd love any Nice Chianti content. It's always a pleasure. When did you last join us on this podcast? I think it was it the Species episode?
It was Species, yeah. And gosh, when was that? That feels like a million lifetimes ago, but yeah, it was
a million lifetimes ago. I'm gonna say maybe I reckon about a year ago.
Yeah, probably somewhere in that region. I've moved to another country since then.
Yes.
Life is very different now to what it was then. But Species was fun. And
so March 2021. So yeah, pretty much a year.
Whoa, that's wild. That is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen each other. We've seen each other in person since we've last been on our podcast together. Then.
Yeah. So
okay.
That's fine. I feel
because you could have told me it was. You could have told me it was like January, and I wouldn't. I would have been like, yeah, that sounds about right.
You're on this podcast merely 2 weeks ago, John. Do you not remember? Was I? I was in a fugue state.
I mean, I'm sure I was having a lovely time, but I don't remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a lovely time. What are you drinking? What have you got? Have you got wine, or are you?
No,
strictly...
it's not good podcast etiquette to be drinking, but I'm doing it. Sorry. That's peppermint tea. I'm a big peppermint tea nut.
Are you?
I love peppermint tea so much.
Every day?
Easily every day. At least 1 cup for sure.
Has it replaced anything? Has it replaced like coffee for you?
Well, I start the day with coffee, but I have a rule because I can only manage so much coffee before I start to go a little bit crazy. So I have to keep it in just the morning. I have a couple of coffees in the morning. 1, 2, 3. 3 is a wild day. 3 cups.
A wild day, a bad day?
No, not necessarily a bad day. And then I move on to peppermint tea, pretty much exclusively, or water.
Because are you still doing the 5 a.m. club, or was that just a temporary thing? So if anybody followed John on any of his social media platforms, for a while you were doing like a 5 a.m. club. Was that was sort of like a creative decision, wasn't it? Like you were writing stuff in the morning.
I used to do my writing and things in the morning. I'll admit 5 a.m. club did start drifting a little later when working from home became the norm. I mean, it was 5 a.m. club because I had to fit in my writing before my commute, which was fairly lengthy. All the commutes in London, I'm not in London anymore, but commuting in London, you've got to, it's a good hour at least. You've got to allocate to that either way. So 5 a.m. club was a necessary thing if I wanted to do anything outside of my day job. That's not really the case anymore, but occasionally I do. I do still get up at 5 a.m. because I am a morning person and I am an early bird. So it happens sometimes just without me even planning to, without an alarm clock.
Your body clock just jumps you up and out of bed.
Yeah.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I very much struggle to get up in the morning, and I very much struggle to go to sleep at night. So I'm definitely a
Gosh,
nighttime person.
where do you do most of your creative work? If you're writing, do you prefer doing it in the morning? Well, your day job is creative work as well, but do you
Yeah,
find that it takes you a little bit longer to get started, or do you drift off at
definitely
night?
takes me a little bit longer to get
Okay.
started. Probably not fully awake until I reckon about 11. The first couple of hours of the day for me are definitely very hazy. But yeah, after that, and then after that, I kind of just work into the night until I kind of think, well, okay, that's enough now. I say work into the night, but some nights I do nothing at all. But
I didn't expect us to be talking about morning and evening routines on Horror Hangout or choices of hot beverages, but I'm going to ask you as well, because you asked me, what's your hot beverage of choice? Are you a coffee man?
so I am a coffee man, and similar to you, the first half of the day, coffee. As it gets a little bit later into the day, I do like a tea. Just a standard PG tips, nothing peppermint. Although I do like peppermint tea as well, just don't drink it very often. And yeah, as the day goes on, a couple of teas as well, and then I'm done. Although I can drink coffee quite late and then pretty much go straight to sleep if I need to.
That's an impressive skill. Very
Yeah,
impressive. This
I'll
chat is making me thirsty.
I'll
I'm going
get
to have
that on
some.
this. Get that on the CV. You say you weren't expecting to discuss these things. However, when we start the podcast, it often does go into strange territory. I think me and Andy have discussed Power Rangers, maybe at one point. So yeah, this is fairly straightforward. I think fairly normal.
Oh, okay, good.
But we'll get into some horror content because that's why we're all here. I
That's why
suppose.
we're hanging out.
That's why we're hanging out on the Horror Hangout. Uh, so this is the first episode I've done without Luke or Andy.
Oh my gosh, really?
Do you know what? Bloody love it. You know what? I want this from now on, even if I'm on my own.
Wow, I feel very special. I mean, this is going to be memorable for you as the first time without either of your co-hosts.
It already is. It already. But thanks for stepping in. And I guess at fairly short notice, because if you listen to last week's podcast, I pretty much found out that Luke and Andy weren't going to be available for this episode while we were recording. And obviously, because I'm such a lovely guy, I reacted nicely. And we should have waited till after we finished recording was when I let them have the full force of my anger and frustration. How could you do that to me? But of course, I felt totally at ease because I knew Mr. John Crinan would be available and ready. Well, I say I knew you would be available.
I mean,
I didn't.
I like your confidence, but yeah.
Just assumed he'd have nothing on Tuesday evening.
No, I was very happy to come along. It's always nice to join you or you guys when Luke and Andy are here as well. Although I don't know if I've ever. Oh no, of course I have been on when Andy's been on because we did the Chianti quiz
episode, yeah,
which is still
infamous.
It's still my. I'm not exactly a veteran podcaster. I've been on many shows. I've been guests. I've had my own shows, and I enjoy podcasting. But that quiz episode remains my very, very favorite podcast experience ever. I never listened to the shows that I've been on myself ever because why would I? I've done it before. I actually have listened to that episode since, and it still makes me giggle so much. It was so much fun.
The quiz ones are fun to listen back to because I kind of forget like what my answers were to questions.
Well, perfectly understandable why you would forget in that particular case.
But also you and Zoe are officially the only duo to have beaten us because we recently, well, I say recently, it was the end of year podcast special where we took on an Earful podcast and me and Luke beat them as well.
Gosh.
So officially, we can't say we're unbeaten because you and Zoe have defeated us. And in a way, you have the crown, so you should have defended it against an earful podcast. Weirdly, with just us in the background, just watching.
Just
Who's
watching.
gonna win it then? Come on.
Well, no, yeah. I was very happy to take part, and we got lucky, and it was good. But it was really, I mean, the victory was lovely, but I remember it fondly for everything else that came before that.
Oh yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
It was good
You've
fun.
made me. Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say Andy obviously puts a hell of a lot of effort into the questions, and it takes him a while. But I almost want one all the time. Like it's almost like I want one like every month or something. He's like, well, I can't. There's just too much effort. What were you going to say, then, John?
I was just going to say it made me think, and it would be utterly chaotic, but I mean, I kind of like chaos. So I think it would be so fun to have an episode where you had multiple so obviously one podcast against the Horror Hangout, but what if it was what if there was 3 podcasts, 4 podcasts? I don't know how
what if there was a
you
way
would manage to do that, but it would be, oh gosh, how much fun would that be?
That sounds like fun. How would Zoom handle it? But we should have some sort of like buzzer buzzing in to get the answer, because then there would be like horror knowledge would be on the line, but also your speed.
Surely someone has made some kind of Zoom add-on or something like that is, because think about all the working from home and Zoom parties that everyone's been doing over the last couple of years. Everyone's doing sort of quiz type things. Me and my family and friends have done like random Zoom quizzes back in lockdown, so there must be a buzzer something or other. I don't know. Google
We're gonna have to look into it. We have to look into it for the next
for
the next quiz episode. I'm sure Andy will love that. Always planning quiz. I think I went through a phase as well of every guest we had on. I couldn't help but challenge them to do a quiz. I think you know it. Do you think you know the answer to this? Well, come and challenge us for it.
I love it. I love the confidence.
Okay, so I do have some horror news, which starts with something that you mentioned before the show as well. So the Stranger Things 4 trailer has dropped. I was a bit confused. I kind of thought we'd already seen a trailer, but I guess it was like a teaser, wasn't it?
We saw a teaser, yeah, for sure, a while ago. You're right. We definitely saw a teaser, but this is the first full trailer, and it is a big cinematic trailer.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Some guy like playing guitar. There's a guy shredding. There's like Robert Englund is in it as a new character called Victor Creel, whose eyes look all. What do his eyes look like? All smushed. His eyes are all been smushed. And obviously, there looks like there's a new big bad scary creature, upside down beastie. Looks a bit. What does he look like? Looks a bit like Psycho Gorman. But he also
Psycho Gorman's a good shout, actually. Yeah.
Do you remember that movie Star Kid? Which had like, you remember this? It was from like, I swear it's like the late 90s. It's got the little kid from Jurassic Park is in it, bit older, and he can pilot this like alien ship. It reminded me a bit like that.
This rings a bell. I can't picture it though, but it does ring a bell.
There aren't many movies that I have like this, but that is one of those movies where I feel like I'm in the minority of people who've actually seen it. But anyway, you climb into it, and inside, it almost looks like an inside-out weird thing. This creature at the end of this trailer looked a bit like that.
Okay. I'm going to be Googling Star Kid now.
I kind of thought I was not over Stranger Things, but definitely not as hyped as perhaps I was at the end of season 3. So I think when season 3 ended, I was like, oh God, can't wait to see what's going to happen. Obviously, it's been a longer time period between seasons because of COVID, and they're splitting this season into 2 parts, I believe. So there's like a season 4, volume 1. And all the kids look about 38 now.
Well, yeah, this is what I was going to say. I think that's the reason why maybe the urgency to see it has dwindled somewhat, for me at least, was because it's just been such a big break. So I remember watching season 3 and thinking, oh God, it's going to be, we have to wait a year now. And then it turned into 2 years. And I think it's been 2 years or maybe even more. I'm not sure. And yes, all the cast, who are predominantly made up of children, have aged. But I'm guessing though, and it sounds like, you've got some character names, some new character information. So maybe you've got a bit more than I've got to go by, because I only saw the trailer just in a tweet. That's how I watched it on my phone.
Yeah.
And it looked impressive. But is it Oh, sorry. I was going to ask if you know this. I kind of feel like maybe more time has passed in the story, in the story of the show, to make up for that. Potentially, I kind of got that vibe that
Yeah,
maybe it was going to be
I
explained
mean,
away why they look so much older than they were.
possibly because at the end of season 3, they left Hawkins, didn't they?
Yeah.
And what's his name? Jim Hopper ended up in
In
some sort of Russian sort of
yeah,
establishment,
a sort of
and
prison type
prison,
deal.
yeah,
Yeah, work camp thing.
and I sort of assumed that a little bit of time had passed, but I guess if that's the case, they can sort of say 3 years later, 2 years later, and that kind of makes sense. I think another one of the reasons is strange is because we've seen a lot of this cast in like movies, you know, like Millie Bobby Brown in movies. What's his name in Ghostbusters as well? What is his name? Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah.
So we've kind of seen them growing up before our eyes, appearing in other things, and that now when we go back to Stranger Things, the thing we first saw them in, it's kind of odd to see that drastic change from like the earlier series. When you see what they look like in series 1, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
I recently watched some featurettes, some documentary type things about the It movies, which were only 2 years apart, I believe, and they had to de-age Finn Wolfhard using using CGI because, like, in 2 years he'd, I don't know, grown a soul patch. I don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the reason they gave. Well, I think it looks like they've de-aged Millie Bobby Brown as well in this trailer. There's some shots that looked like it was
got short
her.
hair.
Yeah, when, obviously they have some flashbacks or something like that. So they're playing around with some de-aging, but I can't imagine they're going to de-age all the
Oh
kids.
no, they can't. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think looks great. I don't really want to see any more. We've seen an official trailer. I've seen a teaser. Now let's just, I'll just wait. I don't need to see any additional trailers. Let's just wait and see what happens. But
Yeah, it's not that long. And I'm guessing they'll drop all of Volume 1 in one go and then split it up and drop Volume 2 like the month later. So that kind of works. I'll hold off. I will avoid rewatching the first 3 seasons because as much as I enjoyed season 1 and even season 3, season 2 didn't. I seem to remember not feeling that quite as much. And also, I think the aging of the cast will be even more apparent if I go back and let myself watch the originals.
I think it makes you feel like you've aged a lot as well when you watch it. When you go, if this is how much they've aged, I can't. I remember. I honestly remember when Stranger Things was like a teaser poster, and it was like all the BMXs, and it was like, oh, from the maker, it looks like it's going to be an Amblin type thing, like inspired by various 80s movies and stuff. And I was like, oh my god, that's cool. And that was like one of the biggest like properties, I guess, TV properties in the world. There's merch everywhere. But yeah, very exciting. Looking forward to it. Love the nostalgia trip stuff. Is it in the 90s yet in this? Because it can't.
I don't know if they're doing Star Kid ripoffs. Maybe it is.
It's gotta be, yeah.
It's gotta be. That's a direct nod. Be.
It's a direct nod to Star Kid. Don't argue with me.
What do you know? What era it was in? I can't remember what era's season 3 was in. Were we in late 80s by that point?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of just think general 80s.
I feel like they will be in the 80s for the whole thing, but maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. I didn't consider that.
No. Interesting. Okay. But yeah, excited for that. The other piece of news is in relation to the t-shirt that you're wearing, is that there we go.
Which says David Lynch to everyone who's
on.
Says David. Who's on audio. Otherwise, that would be a very confusing bit of the podcast.
He's got David Lynch's t-shirt. I'll give it back to him. So it says, in a move that can only be described as Lynchian, which is a way I like to describe lots of things. David Lynch may release. It says may here. May release a brand new film at the 2020 Cannes Film Festival that no one has ever heard about. We can't say no one because people have helped to make it.
Yeah, it's true.
And apparently
Laura Dern is in it. Supposedly. Well, this is
Either
the thing.
wait,
It's we should say right up front, and you did by saying May, that it is only a rumor. This has not been confirmed by anyone. Everyone's picked up on the rumor, and I am very excited, believe me, but I'm trying to keep my excitement in check. This t-shirt I am wearing, just this is a coincidence. I didn't realize, but gosh, yeah, sorry, I spoke over you. You should continue.
I was going to say you're trying to keep your excitement in check, but I know you bounded out of bed this morning. You grabbed your David Lynch t-shirt. You kissed your Blue Velvet poster.
How did you know all this? You've been watching?
I've been watching. Yeah. I've got some. I'm making a David Lynch film on my own, where it's just me monitoring you and your life every day. 3 coffees a day and a peppermint tea.
Sometimes too.
Yeah, sometimes too. Yeah, but this is pretty exciting. I don't remember what was the last thing he released? Oh, it was that short film that ended up on.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, well, his last major film was Inland Empire, which was like 10 years ago now. But he also directed, because well, not everyone forgets this, but he directed every episode of Twin Peaks: The Return. So
Yeah, of course.
which is like an 18-hour long movie. So we have been very us David Lynch fans have been spoiled, honestly, because Twin Peaks: The Return is a masterpiece, in my opinion. And yes, he did release. Was it what Jack did? Oh gosh, I'm gonna lose my David Lynch street cred now. But I forget what that Netflix film was called because I'm more. He's got a lot of short films. What did Jack do?
The Little Monkey.
Yeah.
I had to Google that. I couldn't quite remember. 2017. See, again, that feels like if someone said, "When did you last see this little short film?" I'd be like, "Oh, it's last year sometime, wasn't it?"
Oh, the short film was 2017 as well?
Oh no. Oh, it was released on Netflix in 2020. So there's been a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, that was suitably bizarre, but you know, what do you expect?
I mean, you would be disappointed. You would want a refund if it was anything other than bizarre.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I am ridiculously excited at the prospect of there being a new David Lynch movie that's just going to suddenly drop in Cannes. I don't know how much I believe that rumor yet. I think that one site reported it and every other site and media outlet has picked up on what is a rumor. And, you know, I've been burned by rumors like this before, not necessarily with David Lynch, but things that we think are maybe coming and just don't turn out to be real at all. It would be beautiful if it happened, but
yeah,
I don't know. I dare not hope.
Is he still putting out those? He was doing like, was it weekly or monthly?
He does daily weather reports.
That's
on YouTube.
It's a daily weather report. Yeah. Has he? Well, you could maybe tell if he's kind of like stopped doing that for a while. You're like, hang on, what's he busy doing? Or is he still?
No, he's been fairly consistent. I mean, he basically says the same thing because the weather in LA is basically always beautiful, golden sunshine all along the way. So it's pretty much that. But he's been very, very consistent. He did tease, or not tease, but he did. He sort of teased some kind of announcement. I'm going to stick with that word, which turned out to be that he was going to stop doing them. But the outcry made him reconsider.
Yeah.
So maybe he was going to stop doing them because he was going to start shooting. But you know, I don't know. I would love to see this happen, and I don't know when we'll get confirmation. I can't remember when Cannes Film Festival is, but it must be pretty soon. Next month, I think May. I think, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so it looks like it is. Yeah, like May, like end of May, last week in May.
If it is real, I hope they keep it a secret all the way up to the screening.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it when that happens. In a world where nothing is a secret or a surprise, it's lovely when things are. I mean, I know it's kind of not a secret or a surprise because I'm reading a story about it, but it's still not 100% confirmed, is it? So
yeah, I can't. There must be other films that have really. I'm trying to think if there's any other films that have just suddenly appeared. The Chris Morris movie, is it The Day Shall Come? Have you seen that?
Oh yeah,
That was
that's his
that was kind of a
most recent one, isn't
surprise.
it?
Yeah. I mean, it was a couple of years ago now.
So, yeah, 2019. I don't know if I've seen that.
Oh, it's good. Yeah. I went to a screening of it in Brixton when he did a Q&A afterwards, and it was just awesome. It was so cool to be in
That's his last
in the
film, though,
same
right?
room.
He's not done anything since then.
Yeah, he's only done a couple of. He did Four Lions and The Day Shall Come, and he did
love
like a
Four
little
Lions.
short film which I remember called like, it was called My Wrongs and then like a bunch of numbers which I can't remember, which was kind of fun as well.
I see.
But yeah.
And he made The Double as well. Oh no, wait.
No, that was
he didn't.
Richard.
He didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Richard Ayoade.
Ayoade.
He just appeared in it. I just saw it on his list of films. Then.
Oh, you know what? I haven't actually seen The Double. I didn't know that Chris Morris was in it. I'll have to go and watch that now.
Yeah, it just says cameo. So The Double was pretty good. I quite like The Double. Had fun with that. There's a few sort of doppelganger movies that I was enjoying around about that time. I think I watched a few, including The Double. That was good. The only other bit of horror news I've got is obviously we've gone highbrow with David Lynch movie. Let's go a bit more lowbrow with like in America, there's that Halloween shop, Spirit, Halloween Destination. Is that it? It's like a
I don't know what it's called, but I know that there is like a Halloween, like a pop-up that comes out every October,
like a pop-up Halloween superstore. So can you believe it? They're making a film. They're making a Spirit Halloween film. Now, before you completely switch off, Christopher Lloyd is set to star.
Oh, this is
it's going to be like a family / kids adventure movie, probably in the vein of, probably like the Goosebumps films. But when a new Spirit Halloween store appears in a deserted strip mall, 3 middle school friends who think they've outgrown trick-or-treating make a dare to spend the night locked inside the Halloween store. And then hijinks happen.
There's always hijinks, isn't there?
there's always spooky hijinks. And I'm assuming Christopher Lloyd, if he's in it, he's going to be this, I don't know. He's the guy who owns the store, and it turns out he's, I don't know, evil. Obviously, I've not written it, so I don't know.
He's gonna be like, I don't know, a toy maker or something like that. Yeah, he's gonna have some zany sort of mad scientist almost type vibe going on.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. I think, are we at like halfway to Halloween yet? Because that is a thing. Apparently, I've seen some. I think maybe Shudder has been doing a halfway to Halloween sort of mini sort of film run. I think we are we must be around about now. Oh, sorry, April the 30th is apparently halfway to Halloween.
Get it in your diaries, folks.
Yeah, get it in your diary. The same people who celebrate a half birthday.
So what do people like? I feel like I'm letting the side down now. I'm not a very good horror fan. So halfway to Halloween, what, just people have like sales and movies come out and stuff like that, or what?
So I'll be honest, this is the first time I've seen it. It might have been something that's been going on for years, but this year it's like halfway to Halloween on Shudder. Here are a bunch of new films that we're showing around about halfway to Halloween. So that's the first thing I saw of it, but it does seem to be catching on. I've seen a few other random bits and bobs, a few like horror brands who are kind of saying it's halfway to Halloween now, why don't you have a discount and stuff like that. So maybe it'll catch on.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
I like Halloween. This is a nice little opportunity.
I like Halloween. I like being halfway to things. I'm a glass half full kind of guy.
Yeah.
So,
or you could look at it, we're halfway away from Halloween if you're the glass half empty guy.
Yeah. Oh, Halloween was 6 months ago. I'm so sad. But that means Halloween's 6 months away. Oh yeah, I don't know. I'm just focusing on the bad at this time. Yeah. Right? Just let me.
Please let me.
You do you. That's okay. That's pretty much all I've got for horror news, unless there's anything else pressing that you've.
No, I don't think so. I had the Stranger Things and David Lynch on my notes, and you've covered that. So
we're on the ground for old horror news this week, which is slightly disappointing, but we proceed. The next thing to discuss then is what we've been watching usually we do this like what we've been watching this week, but because you haven't been on the show for a while, I'm not going to ask you to tell me what you've been watching the last year. That might last a while, but anything you've watched recently, whatever time period that you've enjoyed. Doesn't have to be horror. Doesn't have to be.
Well, yeah, because I mean, there probably isn't many horror movies that I've watched recently. I'm kind of letting the side down. Again, I'm definitely going to have my horror fan membership card revoked. I've been playing Elden Ring, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously,
Okay.
recently. I say obviously because it feels like everyone's playing Elden Ring. I'm a little bit late to the party, though. I only started playing it last week. So I'm still pretty fresh into it, but it has been eating into my TV and film watching time for sure. The only other films I was having to think, because I knew we would speak about this, and the only other films I can think of that I've been like really enjoyed. The first one is the new Linklater movie, which is on Netflix, Apollo 10 and a half. Has anyone have you heard of this?
Fairly. I've heard of it. It's
Very recent.
only recently come out, isn't it? Yeah, I haven't got around to it.
I just happened to realize someone tweeted that it was out. Talking about surprise movies, I had no idea that movie was coming. Someone tweeted, "Oh, the new Linklater's on Netflix today," and I think I watched it that night. And it was so lovely. It was a joy to watch. It's very sweet. Basically, it's an animated movie. It's like his a Scanner Darkly style of animation. I believe it's called rotoscoping, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, is it like it's a weird combination? It's like rotoscoping, but it's also like cell shaded in a way. Is it like that or not?
Yeah. It feels like that. It feels very much like a Scanner Darkly. Maybe not quite as highly stylized as a Scanner Darkly was, but definitely it's similar. I don't have the vocabulary or the terminology to be correct. I think it's rotoscoping. Maybe there's cell shading as well. Not 100% sure, but animated over actual actors, you can kind of tell that it's that it's been that someone has acted out the what's going on screen. It's an absolute joy. A story about this 10-year-old kid around the time of the moon landings in Houston, and I don't want to say too much about it because I went into it blind and I didn't really know what the gist of the story was, and it's a really, really fun. I mean, maybe it's on the Netflix description page for all I know, and I'm just being cagey about it for no reason, but I had no idea what the story was about. And yeah, it's kind of like a series of little vignettes, almost. It's a joy. I don't want to say too much about it in case people don't know what it is, and then they can go into it in the same way I did. I loved it. It was so much fun.
I didn't know it was out, so I'll definitely check that out. I think the last Linklater film I watched was Boyhood, possibly.
Okay.
It was a little while ago.
Yeah.
And then I guess A Scanner Darkly before that. So,
which
I love. Which I definitely need to revisit that. It's been a long time since I've seen that.
Did you see A Waking Life? I think it's called, or maybe it's just called Waking Life. It kind of preceded. It's another one of his animated ones, and it preceded Scanner Darkly. Okay. I remember seeing it as a student, and I was like laying awake in the middle of the night, and it came on in like Channel 4, and I didn't see the start. I didn't see the end. I just saw this bit in the middle, and I was like, "What on earth is this movie?" Anyway, another recommendation. But yeah, so Apollo 10 and a half. I have one more recommendation, but in case you've got one, I'll let you go next.
No, I mean, if you've seen anything else, just feel free to mention that.
Well, the only other thing that I wrote down and I watched a couple of weeks ago is a movie called Boiling Point, which has Stephen Graham in it. It is so good. And, it's not a horror movie, but it's a movie that takes place in one continuous take for the whole 90-minute runtime, or maybe it's even more than 90 minutes, I'm not sure, in a professional restaurant kitchen, like a high-pressure, stressful kitchen on this busy night in the restaurant. And it may not be a horror movie, but oh my gosh, it will get your anxiety. It's stressful to watch, honestly.
If anybody has worked in this sort of this sort of environment, yeah,
you will just be. I was just like on edge for the whole thing, but on edge in the best way. Like it makes it sound like it's not pleasant to watch.
It's all in one shot, isn't it? I kept looking, thinking, is there going to be a cut? Was there a cut then?
Yeah, no, right, because you sort of do that when you know a little bit about how these things are made, and if you're a movie fan, there's always the moment where they sort of pass through a shadow, or like, there's a little bit. I believe, and I could be wrong, someone out there may say that I'm wrong, I think the whole thing was done in one. I could not see any joins.
It was really good. I'm with you on that. This one's also on Netflix now, isn't it? I don't think it was.
Yeah, I watched it on Netflix.
But yeah, it's got. I guess it's got a slight feeling of being like a stage play, hasn't it? In a way.
Yeah.
But just the amount of effort you must think there's gone in to making this. And I'm always interested. When these things are one take, I'm almost like, how many times they do it then?
Yeah. I mean, they must have done it so many times. Because you think about it, right? And they've got to get
the best one.
Just the stress of being the one person. If you're the person with one line and you flub it, oh man, come on.
And you go, table 7. Oh no! Oh my God!
And that must have happened, right? I'd love to see some behind the scenes stuff of like someone just messing up, and everyone, because you've got all the choreography of and lines, obviously, and of the cast, but don't forget all the choreography of the crew as well is just as vitally important.
Yeah, of course.
So just like blocking out the shots, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how nightmarish it must be. And there's a couple of moments actually I remember saying, because I was watching it with my flatmate at the time, I remember saying, they just like walked past a reflective surface there, and I've no idea how they managed to keep. Maybe they just like CG'd out or something like that. That's possible. But there's there's like reflective surfaces. They're in bathrooms at certain points because they follow characters in and out of different rooms in the restaurants. Oh man, it's stressful just thinking about filming it.
Yeah, I think if you like stress, it's a good one to watch. It kind of reminded me in a way of like a bit like Uncut Gems, where you're just like on the edge of your seat, like pretty much the whole time. Like, God, what's going to happen next? Maybe not as stressful as that, but still put me in that same sort of mindset. But yeah, a really good film.
Yeah.
The only couple of things that I've seen that I thought worth a mention. I should have mentioned this last week actually, because I did see it last week, but for some reason I forgot to mention it. I saw Studio 666, which is a Foo Fighters horror movie. Now I saw the trailer for this. This is a film I knew nothing about, and then I saw the trailer for it I was watching something else at the cinema, and I was like, is this real? Is this like an advert? Is this like an advert for something? I don't know. And it was always kind of on my list to visit, because I thought, okay, well, I'm not like a huge fan of Foo Fighters, but I appreciate some of their stuff, and I appreciate them as musicians. They all seem like nice guys. Obviously, recently, Taylor Hawkins tragically passed away as well. So that was kind of like, oh, okay, I want to kind of see these guys do their thing, and enjoy that. And I mean, it's not it's not perfect, but it's a pretty interesting concept. It's got some really good practical, gruesome, gory effects. And there's like a fictional band within it called Dream Widow. Yeah. And it's like Foo Fighters instrumental, heavy industrial rock, possibly like, I'll say almost a bit black metal as well.
Yeah, they go there. They go there. I haven't seen Studio. Sorry to speak over you. I haven't seen the movie, but I've listened to the Dream Widow. Is that the name of the band?
Dream Widow. I think so.
I've listened to the album because they released the album on Netflix, and it's banging, man. The album's good.
There's like a 13-minute song at the end of it, and it's kind of it's in the film, this 13-minute song. And I'm glad they released it, because I was like, I want to hear this, whatever this is that they're doing. I want to hear it, and it obviously is them as well. It is Foo Fighters doing it, so it's almost insane to think that they've been able to produce this alongside. I honestly think the soundtrack's possibly better than the film, just because I say that though, but I think everyone involved is surprisingly competent in their performances. That might sound a bit disrespectful, but it's not supposed to. It's supposed to say a rock band are doing a horror movie. You're a bit like, okay, I kind of know what to expect from this. It's probably going to be a bit cheesy over the top, but no, like Dave Grohl when he's doing the Possessed. I mean, we know he's done the Devil before. He was in Tenacious D music videos and stuff, so we know he's capable of it. But him doing Possessed actually is quite believable.
I do want to see it.
There's a certain chainsaw sequence which is like insane. Like if it was in any other film, we'd be talking about it like one of the best moments of gore of the year, practical effects. Because it's in Studio 666, I bet it won't get talked about as much as it should be.
I'm sold. I want to see it.
I did a kind of double bill. I watched the Foo Fighters documentary back and forth, and then this. So it was almost like, okay, let's just see these guys talking about the band, and then we'll see. And I kind of think it carried over, this their personality is carried over into the film, which I kind of liked. They weren't kind of playing. They were playing they were playing over the top versions of themselves, but still, I enjoyed it. And I guess the other thing I've seen, the two things I've seen I'm going to mention are things that I'd never expected to enjoy, but I kind of did. And this next one is Morbius. Jared Leto in Morbius, right? Okay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm not saying that this film is good. I'm not saying that this film is great. I'm not saying that Jared Leto is going to win any awards for his performance. He's not. But I definitely enjoyed this. I enjoyed this far more than both Venom movies. And obviously, considering they're doing the Sony Spider-Verse, whatever that thing's going to be, I find myself like actually annoyed at the Venom movies. Whereas with the Morbius film, I was just like, yeah, all right. Yeah, it's not terrible. I think Jared Leto is doing in this film the bare minimum. And honestly, it's working for him. This film will get people will talk about this film as if Jared Leto's is a terrible actor, because obviously that's the cool thing to think at the moment, and sure, it's right in places, but he's kind of doing not a lot, and it's far more believable him being just like a pretty much blank protagonist. Could be anyone essentially, but it works for him far more than when he's trying to convey something, when he's trying to act. If that makes sense.
I've only heard, so I haven't seen Morbius. I keep on wanting to say Morpheus. But I've just seen the hate online, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
So much hate. I'm gonna put it out there. Tom Hardy is a fantastic actor. He's in some of his performances are up there. I think some of my favorites. I think he's one of those actors that always kind of hits a certain beat and is always good. I hated him in Venom. I was like, what is he doing? It's really, really annoying me. But with Jared, honestly, like I was physically like squirming while watching both Venom movies. But with Morbius, I had a totally fine time.
Is that because sometimes you can have the experience where your expectations have been lowered so much by the critical response that you actually end up having a fun time? Or did you go in like opening night before all that happened? And where were you?
I only saw it a few days ago. So I left it a while. Initially, I wasn't going to go and see it. I wasn't going to go to the cinema because of all the hate. I think I watched the Mark Commode review on YouTube, and he was quite damning about anything. And then Jared Leto, the last few things I've seen him in, so I saw Jared Leto in that film The Little Things, which was kind of like a crime drama, and I really had a problem with with Jared Leto in that. I haven't seen House of Gucci, but I understand he's doing a bit of a caricature of an Italian accent in that.
He's not doing very little in that, as I understand it. I haven't seen it, but I've heard that he is really going for it in that movie.
Yeah, but with
almost so much that it feels like he's in a different movie to everybody else.
Again, I can't say because I haven't seen it. In Blade Runner 2049, he kind of isn't doing a lot. He's doing something.
I have a deep sorry, I have a deep, deep love for Blade Runner. I think I'm or it's definitely out there. I've spoken a lot about Blade Runner 2049 and my love for it because I'm not a massive Jared Leto fan. And when he pops up in a movie that I so completely adore, yeah, I think he's very, I wouldn't say that he's an actor who cannot act. He can, and I've seen him do well in movies.
But he's an actor who seems because if he's understated, I think he does all right. I think it's when he tries to be, because someone made a good point where they said Jared Leto's not been the lead in anything else before this, and I was a bit like, well, I mean, Requiem for a Dream, I guess, but it's almost like a co-lead, isn't it? He's a supporting player in Dallas Buyers Club. He's a supporting player in Fight Club, American Psycho, but Morbius is almost like his first big lead, isn't it? Like, obviously,
which is kind of mad to think because he's been around for so long. So I mean, American Psycho. Look how young he looks in that movie, and that probably wasn't even his first role. I'm not sure what his first is. I'm not a huge. I haven't been following his career, but he pops up in a lot of things, and yeah, it is surprising to know that this is his first leading role. But
and he's like,
I'll see it at some point.
He's nearly 50 years old as well. So for that reason alone, I think I'll go, all right, Jared. I mean, I completely get it. He can come across a bit pretentious. He can come across as a bit like, I don't know. I hate hearing all the stories about him method acting on the sets of stuff and apparently walking around on the set of Morbius with a cane because he's trying to, I don't know. That is all a bit wrong and a bit like, don't really like that very much. But yeah, I had an okay time with Morbius. Don't know if I'd ever need to see it again. Matt Smith is in it as well. I don't think this is a spoiler, but one problem I do have with any superhero movie is when they kind of make the villain, but have the same powers as the hero as such. I think that trope, for me at least, has run its course. I don't want it anymore. And I feel like both the Venom movies are essentially that. Imagine a symbiote. Imagine a Venom, right? Yeah. Imagine it latched onto a serial killer. I know Carnage is a huge character from the comics, books, and everything else, TV show, animated show. I know that, but bloody hell, that was essentially the plot of the first one. There's an evil man and he's got a symbiote now. Can you believe it? This one, imagine another evil man with one. Oh yeah. Just it needs to do something else. And I feel like Morbius, that is something that definitely does get kind of wrong, is that the villain is the same as the hero.
All right, well, you've edged up my expectations just a little bit from where they were, which was pretty much rock bottom, which is potentially dangerous because now I'm going in with like a tiny bit like, well, Ben actually said that this was good.
Oh, I didn't have to say good. I think I said it's not good. It's not great, but it's
a film.
It's all right. It's fine.
It's all right. Okay.
It's totally fine. I think, yeah, me and my girlfriend Charlie, we kind of looked to each other at the end and just went, that wasn't bad. I think we were both kind of like, I think this was maybe the third time that we'd planned to go and see it. The other two times we were like, nah, leave it. Nah, let's just wait.
Yeah, that's been me up until this point. I don't even know if it's still in the cinema. I'm pretty out of the loop on cinema releases at the moment.
It should still be in there. And it reminds me, last thing I'll say on it, but it reminds me of like an early 2000s superhero film. Somewhere like a cross between like a Blade and a Daredevil. I know Daredevil wasn't particularly great, but it got something about it. It's got that sort of vibe. And I
dig the 90s. Blade's enough for me. I wasn't a big Daredevil fan, but yeah, a comparison to Blade, I'll take that.
It borrows a lot from other films as well. I think it borrows a lot from like The Fly, like a scientist trying to create something and suddenly he's leaping around the lab, all hunky.
I think I'd heard that a lot of the motivations and story logic didn't really hold up to much scrutiny. That doesn't bother me all the time. Sometimes it needles at me in ways that annoys, but I can sometimes forgive it. I don't know. I'll have to see it.
I think because I had such a bad time with Venom, I maybe was a bit kinder to this one just because it wasn't Venom, so I was like a bit relieved. All of the like post-credit stuff is very much bolted on. It's very much like, okay, all right, we get it. But yeah, that is that. For what I've seen this week, apart from the film of the week, which is a movie called oh gosh,
I'd forgotten why we were here.
Including like pre-podcast chat.
I know
we've discussed everything but this film so far. It seems we've covered everything. We've put the world to rights. We've
well, we haven't had a chance to catch up for a while, so I think we're allowed to have an excuse. We have been speaking for quite a while, listeners. So yeah, I had forgotten that we were here to talk about this movie.
Yeah. I was like, right, there's a movie we're going to talk about now, and you're like, huh? What? Okay, so the film of the week is The Changeling, which is a 1980 Canadian supernatural psychological horror film directed by Peter Medak, starring George C. Scott, Trish Van Devere, and Melvyn Douglas. After the death of his wife and daughter in a car crash, a music professor staying at a long-vacant Seattle mansion is dragged into a decades-old mystery by an inexplicable presence in the mansion's attic.
There we go.
Wow.
There were plans at one time to turn it into some kind of a museum. But I don't know. I guess the house was meant to be lived in.
Why hasn't it been lived in?
The impression I get is that they haven't tried very hard with this place. Kitchen's in here. And this is the music room. This is really why I thought of you and this house. Piano was left here when the society took over. Just too much trouble to move, really. It must be in very bad shape.
Terrifying. Okay, what have we got? We're currently looking at this is on 7.2 on IMDb, and 3.6 on Letterboxd. I'm not sure about Rotten Tomatoes, actually. I usually get that, but it's vanished from where it was. Forget it. A couple of choice reviews from users on Letterboxd here for us to discuss. Michelle Parsons says, a most excellent haunted house film. That wheelchair scene still gives me the willies. George C. Scott's facial reactions in this movie do crack me up. They basically go something like this: expressionless, 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 heart attack.
Oh, I thought it was going to be expressionless, expressionless, expressionless eyebrow. He's got a good eyebrow.
She's given it 3.5 stars. Cherry, a user called Cherry, says, absolutely killer set design in the attic. Big fan of massive cobwebs. 3 stars.
Aren't we all?
And then Zara Gwen says, I see where James Wan got all of his ideas from. 4 stars. These were choice reviews. However, it did seem like from delving into the Letterboxd reviews, it's got a lot of like 5-star reviews from a lot of users. Like people are into it. People are loving it. Have you seen this before?
I have, yeah. I think I watched it a few years ago. I actually believe, and if I dug back through my old social media posts, I actually believe I watched this as part of my 31 horror movies in October type challenges that I tend to attempt. I don't succeed, but I attempt every year to watch 31 new to me horror movies.
Okay.
Well, actually, that's not technically true, because I always finish Halloween. My Halloween tradition is I always watch Ghost Watch, the classic.
Oh
movie,
yeah, of course.
which I adore.
Andy did recently mention that we should cover that, so maybe.
Oh really?
I'm gonna say it out loud so you can remember. You should join us for a Halloween. special.
Gosh, I would love
if you
to
do that every year.
I adore Ghost Watch. Yeah, I can't believe that I haven't said to you guys before, like, have you guys spoken about it? It's an amazing movie. But yes, I will 100% join you if that happens. Hold on, I've started talking about Ghost Watch now, and now I've totally lost my train of thought. Did I watch it before? So I think I watched it as part of that only a few years ago. This is not something from, my earlier days. This is a relatively recent watch for me.
Mm-hmm.
So when you asked me to come on, I was excited because I don't want to, give anything away, but I enjoyed it that first time I watched it, and getting to rewatch it last night was a treat.
Yeah. So I'd never seen it before. This was the first time for me. I don't know why I hadn't seen it before, because it's always one of those that I've kind of seen. Seems like in the horror community, everyone seems to think of it as one of the classics. I can't remember. I think I maybe just saw somebody share it on Twitter and said this film doesn't get enough love, and I was like, oh god. Not only have I not seen that, but we've obviously not covered it on the podcast either. So yeah, first time for me, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. There's something about this era of horror, which I'd say is like I say this era of horror, but also this type of horror film from this era, sort of like 73, which was obviously The Exorcist, through to 80. But there's something about that period of horror, prestige horror, I've seen it described as, that really does just resonate with me. Stuff like, Don't Look Now, stuff like The Omen, Exorcist, obviously, and now this film, which I think I could safely say is a new favorite, because
I think it stands up against those other movies for sure. In that 100%. Prestige horror band.
And as somebody, and obviously the way modern horror treats supernatural movies, kind of very much like there are very certain beats that they have to hit. Obviously, jump scares are big, and you can anticipate the beats of the film, and you kind of know where it's going. This has got such an interesting central mystery that it kind of really does stand up, and that creepy atmosphere that's got running through it, combined with the scares, which are like unconventional scares. Really, it's not like there's a face or there's a figure or anything like that.
And not just unconventional scares, but very, very effective scares. Like so often, yeah. Especially when you're a horror fan and you've seen as many haunted house, ghost story movies as we probably have, you sort of get used to it. You get into the rhythm of it, and you know when things are coming. There's something about this movie. It shows very little, very, very little, and something as simple as like a bouncing ball bouncing down the stairs is absolutely terrifying, and it really properly like affects me. I was watching it last night. I've seen it before. I knew what was coming. There were still moments, and I don't want to jump ahead, where literally like the hairs in the back of my neck were standing up. I was like, this is working. And I don't really fully understand how they do it, but it's so effective.
I'm totally with you on that. The hairs on the back of the neck thing have always been like my barometer for how much I enjoy a film. Like it's like the hairs on the back of your neck, and also I get like the sort of goosebumps running up and down my arms, or like weird sort of like shiver where you're a bit like, oh god. Yeah. And it doesn't happen very often, especially I think with the films we cover on this podcast. Obviously we cover some really, really great films, but those genuine scares, and for me, it really has always been that era of horror. Like Exorcist is one of, if not my favorite horror movie. And, I get that hair on the back of my neck thing probably like 6 or 7 times, maybe even more. And so when I get it from a film that I've never seen before, I really do appreciate what goes into that. And if you would have told me, if you'd have like explained the scare to me initially, there's going to be a bouncing ball bouncing down the stairs, and that's going to be creepy, you'd be like, oh yeah, I've seen it before. We've seen little toys roll up. We've seen The Shining, for example. We've seen that something rolls out of frame, and yeah, okay, we got it. But this is so effective. The way it does it, the way it kind of, obviously, yes, of course, we'll get into it. But there's that one. There's another particular scare following a mirror break.
Oh yeah.
Which I was like, oh god, holy shit. Yeah, incredibly, incredibly effective, and obviously, yeah, sure, a slow burn. But having that mystery and that sort of detective element almost to it as well, with the main character, John Russell. I've always enjoyed. I mean, I can something like The Ring, obviously a remake of Ringu, but I've always really enjoyed the remake of The Ring, and I love the sort of detective element that goes alongside that, as the main character just unearths this mystery and finds out what happened. And I guess it kind of reminded me of that in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some bits of the detective story that's happening that I think are a little bit. I think it makes some leaps. There's some,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, we're going where? Okay. I don't know if I entirely follow your train of thought, but it doesn't matter. And we'll get to those as well. There's a lot coming up, and I kind of am reluctant to go in too deep on any one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the things I was just thinking, and I was thinking this as I was watching it this time, it's an incredibly effective, scary story, as we've already established. But one of the things that's really interesting and about it, that I kind of think this film stands alone, is that you are scared, we are scared as the audience, but George C. Scott's character is completely blasé about so many things. And I'm sure this is going to be a recurring thing that I'm going to keep on butting my head up against, because I think it's so interesting. I can't think of any other horror movie or like haunted house, ghost story, where the character is so on board with the fact that this is a haunting.
And he doesn't
also
seem like the kind of man who would be, does he?
So, yeah, he seems like he might. That's the way you feel when you're first introduced to him, and this goes back to you saying it's unconventional. When you first meet John Russell, you think he's probably going to be. He's probably going to be a bit of a skeptic. He's a bit of a man's man type guy. He's a conductor, but he's probably going to be that's what's going to happen. He's going to be the skeptic, and all this weird stuff's going to happen. No, he seems to be on board almost immediately.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a good point to bring up right at the start, because we're going to get into it fairly quickly. But he's just, there doesn't seem to be any moment of skepticism or disbelief. And then when he accepts what's going on, you would then expect the character to be slightly apprehensive, slightly scared. Again, he doesn't seem particularly bothered by what's going on. And he mucks in, like later on, quite literally, when he climbs down into a well, which we'll get to. He does all these things that you would be screaming at the screen in any other movie for them not to do, because it would make no sense for a terrified person to do it. But he completely gets away with it because he's not scared in the slightest. Yet somehow it's still massively effective to the audience.
Yeah. He's very hands-on, isn't he? He seems like the kind of guy, right? What's happened here? Get out of the way. Like he's the kind of guy, like if something was wrong with your car and you were fixing it, like in the street, you'd walk past and he'd go, "What's going on here then?" And he'd automatically he'd just like go, "Right, out of the way, I'll fix it. Come on. We'll get you back on the road before you know it."
That's how I feel about most people, what most people were actually like in the 80s before. Everything that I need to do now, I have to watch about 5 YouTube videos to learn how to change a light bulb or something. But I just assume that people used to know how to do this stuff. Oh, you know how to wire a plug? That's amazing. I would have to Google it.
I need to watch at least 10 YouTube videos. But also, I kind of understand that this is what I get from the understanding of the character. Is that because he's experienced this huge loss and he's going through, quite a torrid time of grief, it's almost like maybe before, this is how I feel about him as a character, maybe before he would have been a bit more skeptical. But because he's gone through this grief, it's almost like that he doesn't seem weak in a way, but this veil has come down in a way. He's more accepting to things that are happening around him. And kind of wanting to fight through it, almost like it's a bit of a distraction in a way. There is obviously a scene where he's sobbing, and then he does stop sobbing as when there's like a noise. It's almost like he's like, "Thank God, this house is haunted. I'd have nothing to do."
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, and that scene, I remember the exact moment when that banging just interrupts his grief. And yeah, you're right. It does actually give him something to do, and that's an interesting take on it for sure.
A very, very interesting character, I think.
For sure, absolutely. And it's one thing, I don't know if we want to talk about, what the beats that are happening, but obviously at the start, his wife and daughter are killed
Yeah.
tragically in an accident, and he then makes the move
Yeah.
to
Well,
Seattle.
we'll talk about the plot. We won't talk about every element, but we'll talk about the key bits. So I guess I'll just talk about the cast really quickly. So it's George C.
Okay.
Scott as the main actor, John Russell as the main character. Sorry, George C. Scott. I don't think I've seen him in loads of stuff. He was in The Exorcist 3.
I was just about to say that. I kept on thinking of The Exorcist 3
Yeah.
as I was watching it. That'll always be the George C. Scott movie for me.
Yeah, and there are some similarities, I guess, in the performance in that. So he plays Lieutenant William Kinderman. I read the book Legion fairly recently as well, and it was after. Well, I say recently, it's probably about a year ago now, but it was after I'd recently watched Exorcist 3, and it was a really good performance on how the character was on the page. And they got Trish Van Devere as Claire Norman, who's like the head of this. Not the head, sorry. She works for this. What is it? She works for that sort of look after the house.
It's like some kind
Society?
of charitable society organization that protect essentially the equivalent of listed buildings in the States. I don't know if they're called listed buildings, but that seems to be her deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much those two. There are some other supporting characters. There's a senator. He obviously becomes more important towards the end of the film. There's a police officer. Jean Marsh plays Joanna Russell, who is John's wife, who does, as you mentioned, does die in the first scene alongside their young daughter. Jean Marsh has always kind of terrified me because sorry, Jean Marsh, because she's like these two very, very specific childhood memories I have of films that scared me. She plays she's in Return to Oz as Mombi, like the main villain who like takes her head off and puts another head on.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
And that film used to scare me. And she's also in Willow as like the Queen, who also used to scare me. So now, unfortunately, sorry, Jean Marsh, when I see your face, I almost go, oh no, not you. Oh God.
Oh, right. I mean, this was a scary movie just with the ghost stuff, but you had even more trauma to deal with it right from the off.
Luckily, she got splattered by a car in the first scene. She got mown down like I mean, obviously that scene is tragic. I
was wondering. I know that we like to, you like to have a laugh on this podcast, and I was like, how are we going to deal with that? And then just immediately, like, yeah. That's how we have a laugh about it.
Another thing I kind of laughed at, sorry, John Russell, is that obviously what happens is he's a composer from New York. He's moving to Seattle after the tragic deaths of his wife and daughter. There's like it's snowing, their car's broken down. He goes to a phone box to call the AA or whatever the version of that is, RAC.
Alcoholics Anonymous. What?
And this scene just reminded me of Anchorman when he was like trapped in a glass case of emotion in the phone box. He like couldn't quite get out. He's like, no. And there's like a truck coming around the corner, speeding, and it crashes into a car, doesn't it? And that car seems to just wipe out his wife and daughter.
It's fairly brutal, right? It's a bold opening for a movie, and it is grim. It's
and the way
horrible.
The title card just appears there, like when he's in the phone box in the glass case of emotion, appears there. In terms of the title, The Changeling, I never, just from knowing the title of this film, I always assumed it was about a changeling, which is like a I mean, I don't know loads about these, but some sort of supernatural thing that replaces something unknowingly to like the parent. It's usually like a baby or something, isn't it?
Yeah, my understanding is it was essentially sort of like woodland fairies would take or some kind of creature would take the babies and replace them with something sort of wrong and like maybe not quite not quite right, but
and there is something like that in terms of the origins of this haunting, but it's not like, I mean, obviously it is supernatural, but it's not supernatural in that sense in terms of what a changeling is. It kind of just represents something that happens.
This is another reason why this film is so successful, I think, at what it does is because there is like a really satisfying, seems like an odd word to describe it, but just from a plot and story point of view, like it feels like substantial in some way. Like it's a very the ghost, if you like, is a very kind of like troubling crime that really, and again, I don't want to jump ahead, but really is quite an interesting moral question that that arises from it because of things that we'll get into, I guess, when we get there.
Yeah. No, I think you're completely right. So obviously, after that tragedy, John Russell moves to a mansion. He goes and views it first. So it's like an agent. There's an agent of the local society, as we mentioned. So it's Claire Norman. She tells him that the property's been vacant for 12 years, but obviously someone's been sweeping the floors or whatever, making sure.
Dusting the books. I saw someone was dusting the books.
There's a guy dusting the books.
Which
no one's bloody read these in 12 years. Anyone mind if I take them? So it's quite an investment for obviously. So we understand George C. Scott. He's a successful composer. He's obviously got a bit of money behind him. He's gone, I'll tell you what, rather than buying a little place where I can just live on my own and see out the rest of my years, I'll get a massive mansion.
It's so absurdly huge. So absurdly huge. It's obscenely huge, this movie.
And how far away is New York from Seattle? In my head, really far away.
Yeah, it's on the different coast, isn't it? Or am I wrong? Oh gosh, I shouldn't have said it out loud in case I'm wrong.
I don't know, but it's quite far away. It is on a different coast. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I thought so. Right, okay.
So
yeah, it's a long way.
At one point, I was like, he's in New York, and then the next minute he was in Seattle. So obviously, he wasn't in New York. He obviously just moved completely away from New York.
One thing that I like about this transition actually as well, because he's having a little conversation before he moves in with some friends, I think, that he has in Seattle, and he says he describes, and it feels a little bit like an exposition dump because he describes, you know, his reaction to his wife and daughter dying, which is obviously, you know, to go kind of a little bit mad, and he talks about this really horrible time when he basically lost his mind, and he said that was 4 months ago or I think it was 4 months. But basically what that does from a story point of view, which is quite interesting, is it tells us how long ago it was that he really hit the bottom of his grief. But what he had said before that was, I didn't feel anything for a while. So we actually don't know how much time has passed. It has this satisfying way of making us think that maybe it's just been 4 months, but maybe it's a bit ambiguous, and maybe he just kept on working and like ignoring this grief for a long time. I don't know, that just, I liked that question mark of going, when did this happen? How long has it been? Because you can't quite get a read on this guy because he's so stoic and stuff. He's kind of impenetrable as a character.
Yeah, definitely. And so in that way, we don't understand if this is a rash decision, the fact that he's gone, I'm just going to buy a mansion, or if it's something he has genuinely been thinking about for so long. But yeah, so he moves in. I mean, it's quite a nice place. It's got like a study. It's got like a music room, which is obviously good. Oh, it comes with its own piano. Lovely. There's loads of furniture around. Like, you can have the pick of this. He's like, oh, I've absolutely hit the jackpot. Yeah.
You've got your own book duster now. He'll come round every Tuesday, dust your books.
He's like,
just books though.
Just your books. Yeah. He's like, he's built a load of dust again. What have you been doing with these? Well, not reading them. That's how it works. So yeah, pretty early on, he starts to experience some unexplained phenomena. But at the same time, it's like this film moves at such a pace, like such a sort of, I don't want to say glacial pace. It's not like super slow. You're not like bored, but it kind of like just feeds you these tiny little snippets and tiny little nuggets of scary stuff without ever. There's no.
Sorry to talk over you. I feel slightly differently about this point, though. I do agree that it has a sort of, it does have a kind of meandering pace in places, but I was actually, like I said at the start, this was a rewatch, and it had been a few years since I'd watched it last time. The next scene that we're going to describe, because basically where we're at in the story is the grief moment where he hears the banging that kind of knocks him out of his grief and starts this investigation. But very, very soon after that, we have loud banging in the house. So yeah, that's a fairly standard story beat that we know in every haunted house story. There's a scene very soon after it where, and I don't want to jump around too much, but very soon after it where the taps are running, and he explores the house and finds like, oh, the tap in the kitchen sink's running, the one on the second floor is running, and then there's a bath right at the top.
I thought he'd been hit by the wet bandits from Home Alone because the taps are running.
I tell you what, they must have thought they were going to clean up when they saw the size of this house. They're like, oh my gosh, we are going to clean up here. There's a book duster that comes round.
There's a piano. Do you reckon we get this piano in our van? I mean, yeah.
But apart from the water bandits, like them coming around, the point I was going to make is in any other, I think, and maybe I am jumping ahead just a tiny little bit, but very soon he explores all the way up with this running water. He gets up to the top, and there's a bathtub where he sees a vision of a kid.
Yeah. So does he see the boy? So I think one thing that this film does well at is that I'm not always convinced that we're seeing exactly what John is seeing. Oh. I sometimes feel like we're perhaps seeing something. I don't know whether we're seeing like what the house is showing the audience, or we're within the house, because there's a moment later as well where I've already mentioned it, and we'll describe it in more detail, where a mirror smashes, and there's a moment there where I'm like, has John seen that, or is it just like, does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does, and
his reaction, I think that may be because of how, as you mentioned, blasé his reactions are. Because if you saw a little boy in a bathtub, you would just be like, what the holy shit, what the but he's a bit like, oh god. Oh dear.
Yeah, I mean, my read on it was that he did see the boy's face, basically, this sort of distorted underwater face, but it's just a kind of, it's slightly more than a blink and you'll miss it. I mean, as an audience member, you know exactly what you're looking at, but my kind of read on it was that maybe it was just a kind of trick. He maybe put it down to a trick of the light, but that's an interesting question that I hadn't considered. Maybe as an audience member, we're getting a little bit more information.
I think in many other films that were sort of haunted house films, you would think, right, I'm seeing what the character's seeing. But I don't know, there was something about this film where I was a bit like unsure.
It would make more sense for some of his reactions and how
yeah, like,
I mean, I'm not the first person to describe his sort of performance as stoic. I've seen that kind of mentioned. I looked at the Wikipedia page before we came online to talk about it, and I think there someone in some newspaper reviewed it, and it was like, he's like, this is a really odd take on the character, or an
he's
odd
just
way to
slightly annoyed by proceedings most of the time. He's a bit like, oh, I just want to cry in peace, and there's you banging all the pipes. So he does get the book duster dude, who's also does a bit of plumbing on the side. Oh no, he doesn't.
Or gardening.
He's got plumbing, gardening. Yeah, he's a man of many talents. He sort of mentions that the banging was probably just the boiler. The boiler's got habits, he says, and he says like,
oh yeah, he does. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He says, and it's an old house, so he's like, no. Obviously, his musicianship comes into it. He's like, no, the banging, it was too rhythmic. And he knew exactly what the structure, the timing was. So he was like, no, it's not that. Obviously, this is a fairly spooky thing. So I guess we'll set it up by he's trying to write something new, like a new composition, and he's coming up with a certain melody, and he can't quite get it, but he's almost there. And I think he records it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then what follows up from there, that's obviously the setup for this scene, is when he's leaving the house one day, a tiny little piece of red stained glass seems to like fire out of the window
Yeah.
at him.
Like just from way up high, just one of these tiny little stained glass panels explodes outwards.
Yeah. But again, even now he seems a bit like, well, how peculiar. That's strange.
Well, this is my yeah. He just picks it up and kind of like starts. He just goes into detective mode again, like exactly like you described. This is something that distracts him from his grief. And now that I've got that read on it, it's reframing things like live as I'm talking about it. But this is the point I was going to before I realized I was jumping a little bit too far ahead because we had to go through the banging and the water. He obviously sees, he investigates, where has this glass come from? He looks up at the front of this massive house, which you have behind you, and anyone watching the video of this. Yep. And
it's like this window, isn't it?
Spots that little window that it has a panel missing, and he goes back inside, climbs the stairs, and you sort of see him go through. You kind of get the feeling that he hasn't even fully explored. Well, he hasn't explored this house fully yet because it's so colossal. And he realizes that he can't quite pinpoint the room where this corresponding window should be. And very quickly, and apologies if there's anything you want to say, but he finds a cupboard, realizes there's a bit of a draft coming through it, rips down the shelves and finds this secret room, this room that has been hidden away. Yeah. My point earlier when you were talking about the kind of, I know you didn't necessarily describe it as glacial, but slow pace. My feeling is that the reveal of this room in any other haunted house movie would happen so much later. Yeah. You would have so many things going on, weird little happenings in the house, strange noises, bumps in the night, whatever, the taps, blah, blah, blah. I think in most other haunted houses, and ghost stories, that little segment that really just takes up the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, it feels like it's probably a little bit more. I feel that's stretched out to something more approaching a glacial pace in other movies. And it's one of the things I love about this is how quickly it gets to it. I can joke a little bit about how I thought Russell was going to be this skeptic and how quick he is to accept a ghost, but I kind of like that because I feel sometimes as an audience member you are already you already buy into the fact that being like it's a ghost story. You've seen the trailer, you've seen the poster, whatever. You're there to see a ghost story, and sometimes it can just annoy you a little bit when the character just seems reluctant to accept it. I can't think of a movie off the top of my head, but I've definitely had this feeling in the past where I just feel we are 10 steps ahead of you. Yeah. And this movie does not, you cannot say that about this movie
it's
at all.
It's not always the main character, but there's always someone, isn't there? There's always a skeptic. When it's a main character is quite often, but I do enjoy how he rips down the shelves as well. He is like, right, these shelves are getting ripped right down. I'm not gonna get anywhere to get a hammer and start taking the nails out. I am ripping them down with my bare hands. And in this room
he
is like
didn't even watch a YouTube video how to take down the shelf.
Not for a second. What are you playing at, John Russell? You animal. I bet he had a splinter in his hand afterwards, so we didn't see that bit. That was why he was sobbing. So it goes into this room, this like secret room, boarded up, finds basically where that piece of red stained glass had come out of the house. And it's just cobwebs everywhere. So there's like a bed, isn't there? Basically it's just like a room it's like a kid's room. There's a wheelchair which is completely covered in cobwebs.
This place hasn't been stepped in or lived in for a very, very long time.
A hidden attic bedroom. And so based on that piano scene as well, the creepy nature of this is that John finds a music box, opens it, and it plays. Well, initially I didn't recognize it. Initially I wasn't like, oh, that's that quality bit of piano he's playing just now. Before I was like, well, what is that? But obviously then we're made to understand that it's the exact same tune that he was playing downstairs when he was trying to write the music. And he explains to Claire Claire comes around not long after this, and he's explaining to her a lot of the strange things and the fact that he found the room. I think he shows her the room as well, doesn't he?
Yeah. They don't like. That's what's so great about it. They just like, yep, okay, here we go. Here's the room. This is everything that's happening.
But that
That's a
almost
really
kind of
spooky
feels
wheelchair.
It's kind of crazy, but that's kind of really realistic, isn't it? Because if that really did happen, I found this weird room up here. What? Oh yeah, and this
Show
music
me.
box. Show me.
Yeah.
And this music box is playing the same thing I was writing before. No, it wasn't. Don't be silly. Your mind's playing tricks on you. Like, it feels more realistic, like how people would probably genuinely react. Like, sure, he's probably more believing than some, but yeah, it's
Yeah, and the way that he demonstrated this audio, this music box matching his piano song as he plays back the recording with the music box playing. And I just want to say, like, kudos to him, because if you've ever lined up two bits of audio and tried to get them synced,
oh my God,
it's an absolute nightmare.
He does it first time.
He's done this before the days of Audacity or anything else. He's just got a music box and an old.
So let me just line this up. Give me a second. Actually, wait. Let me just open Audacity. Let me just drag the files over to the. No, that's not quite right. No, give me a second. Wait, I'm nearly there.
Yeah, let me zoom in a little bit further. I'll get this. I'll get it.
And he nails it straight away. So that's why he's a renowned composer, obviously.
That's why everyone showed up to his lecture at the start.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
That's what he's here for. He's going to be lecturing in the university, and he had a class. That's a nice little character moment. It didn't really go anywhere, just to kind of demonstrate how adored he is as a composer. That he had his first class had like 23 signups, and then a full lecture hall turned up.
And it demonstrates a bit of his humor as well in this moment, doesn't it? Like, he has a bit of a laugh of it, tells a couple of jokes, everybody laughs, and we go, and he goes, right, now on with the shit hot piano playing.
He's a born entertainer, yeah.
He's a born entertainer. So yeah, and then after that, it kind of, there's a bit of kind of like detective stuff, digging into the history of the house. And then they find, so it's like a classic, how are we going to find out about this house? Get yourself to the library and start looking at all of the history of the house, any murders, any deaths, any stuff like that. And they find some information about a young girl who was killed outside the house in 1909 by like a coal cart. Is that right?
Yeah. Am I right in saying that she was a Carmichael? I think her name was Cora or something like that. She wasn't just
that's right, isn't it?
She wasn't just a random girl, I don't think. And yeah, this becomes the sort of she becomes the kind of focus of their investigation. And relatively soon after that, they decide that the answer is to hold a séance, which is like, you know, again, in any other movie, we might wait a bit longer before that happens, but it's like, oh well, there's a ghost. This girl died.
Who does he speak to? He speaks to some random guy, and there's not some random guy. He does seek out this person. He works somewhere, and he says, like, oh, 99% of mediums are full of shit, but the 1% are amazing. And this was like, all right, well, how do you know what the 1% is?
I think it's
kind of just a game of chance.
I think it's someone in his university who's in like parapsychology or something like that. I don't know. There's some kind of interesting research going on, and he's the one that I guess passes on the business card of the 1%, the legit mediums.
Yeah, and this is, I think, the medium, the woman who plays the medium is a great performance as well, and again feels more realistic. We're not going for the scary old lady or like the adorable old lady or anything like that. She's just seems like a normal woman. She looks at her husband, and also the way they communicate with the spirit as well is quite unique, isn't it? There was no Ouija board or
it's kind of exactly what you say. It feels sort of realistic, and everyone just kind of, you know, some of the characters that we've got. So Claire turns up the mum turns up as well, right?
Yeah.
Is it Claire's mum from because there was a little moment earlier which I guess I guess bears mentioning when they're at a party and he meets her and he meets her mum, and also Carmichael, who is going to become a much bigger part of the story, does a little speech. But as the viewer, and even John Russell and Claire, they're not particularly interested. They actually go get a drink when he's speaking, but it just gives us that little glimpse of this person who's going to pay off a lot later. But yeah, everyone just turns up and at the seance, and they kind of dim the lights. But it's shot in quite a matter of fact way. It's not.
Yeah.
This is the thing that's why it's so surprisingly effective in places. And they begin, and all that's happening, I believe, is that she's just like got a pencil in her hand and is scrawling on a bit of paper and asking questions to Cora, who they think they're trying to speak to. But there's a moment, I can't remember exactly where it comes in the beats of the seance scene, but this is one of the surprisingly effective moments. There's a point of view shot that comes down the stairs as they are in the room. And it's got that kind of like, POV, a bit shaky cam type thing, as if it's someone walking down the stairs.
There's a couple of shots like that.
Thinking about it now creeps me out. It's so surprisingly effective.
I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you wait till you hear what I got to say. And again, the reason why this is effective is because it does seem like they're trying to communicate with a certain spirit. And the fact that the spirit isn't that person, it turns out to be somebody else, almost adds that another layer of like authenticity to it, where you're a bit like, oh god, if this medium was out to make a quick buck, maybe she'd just go along with it and say, oh yeah, Cora, she's here, yeah, she got knocked over by the coal cart, oh, she's devastated, yeah. But no, there's another spirit in the house called Joseph, and yeah, they're scribbling on the paper and asking the questions pretty much over and over again. Are you this person? No. What's your name? Joseph. What else? What other information did I get?
Well, they ask him how he died. Did he die in this house?
Yeah.
How did he die? And he actually answers it, but I can't remember exactly what he says. Oh, is it? Father? Yeah, okay, father. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And
what was the thing they did after that bit where they had like a Tin Man's hat on the, the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz? They got a Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. They ripped his head off and they put that in the middle of the room.
Yeah, it just kind of. It was a continuation of the seance, and what were they asking at that point? Gosh, I only just watched it last night and I'm forgetting. But yeah, just in case, I'm sure that everyone's listening's probably seen it, or if you haven't, it was just a really, really odd tin cone.
Piece of weird apparatus, and it was shaking, but I was like, is that because there's a spirit, or just because it looks ever so wobbly, doesn't it?
There's only one of the legs on the table shorter than the others, so it's just like wobbling.
And the husband is just nudging it like going, oh, bloody hell, you never believe this is terrifying.
All those sheets of paper that he was taking up that she was scribbling on, he was actually folding them up really quickly and like stuffing them under the short leg. Someone's got to sort this table.
So at the end of that moment, the cone flies off and smashes like a glass or something, doesn't it? And this is another thing. This spirit doesn't use violence all that much. There are obviously moments of violence. There are deaths apparently at this spirit's hand, but for the most part, it doesn't tend to use violence. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's weird. I was almost like, is this supposed to be like a malevolent spirit, or genuinely just a spirit who's seeking some sort of...
Well, my feeling was that, and this is, anyone watching this, I'm sure, will know that spoilers abound because we're going to get to the end of the movie at some point. But it kind of felt like a childish spirit. It's got that kind of, childlike temper tantrums type thing. So I kind of feel, and we see that again in a big way in the finale. So yeah, I agree. It's got a sort of innocence to it and a vulnerability. But here, for whatever reason, maybe because of the repetitive nature of the questions, or just because it doesn't feel it's getting through, it kind of has that strop moment where it just really violently shows its power and sends this glass careening.
Yeah, and it seems like violence is like a last resort for this spirit, almost like it wouldn't be violent, but you guys are just trying my nerve.
You guys aren't getting this. Come on.
After that, John goes back to his audio equipment and listens back to the recording. Again, something like this is very commonplace in all haunting movies, but this feels like it's got to be one of the earliest versions of this, right?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure it isn't, but it's one of the earlier iterations of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be. It's a trope. This whole like ghostly voices appearing on a recording. I think it's called like ESP or something like that, but I can't remember what that stands for. Okay. I really dig this. This is God. I sound like a broken record, and I'm going to use the phrase "effective" so frequently, but I just love it when a filmmaker or a storyteller is going for something and it just lands. It just lands exactly as it's supposed to. And this film does it all the time. This is an effective scare. I honestly don't know. I mean, I guess, gosh, I wonder what would be an earlier example of this. But yeah, it's got to be early, one of the early ones for sure.
Is there anything like that in The Exorcist where they listen back to anything and hear? Not sure.
It's not coming to me, but oh gosh, I'm going to lose my.
Maybe I'm thinking of Exorcist 2. I think there might be something like that. But yeah, I think it feels like a lot of this stuff is just really back to basics, bare bones versions of quite traditional supernatural scares. It just feels like they're done in such a way that they just feel rooted in reality, which I think is why, if there was a different character leading proceedings in this film, we might be a bit more like, oh, it's not really as effective as you say. But because it's old John Russell, Mr. George C. Scott, it does almost feel like we're there with our uncle or something, and he's going, never guess what, listen to this. Voice of a ghost on this recording, and you go, what? And he'll go, yeah, weird, isn't it? Anyway, it's like
he does. They do potentially like oversell it, because he like obviously hears it. He hears the faint, ghostly sound of this child speaking on the recording, which obviously wasn't in the room when they were doing the seance in the previous scene. And then he like turns it up and he rewinds it, and then we hear it. We very clearly, distinctly hear it. And he rewinds it, turns it up, and he does that like what feels like it's not 10 times, but they potentially oversell it. Like, okay, we got it, we know that he's there, but it still works. It's still effective. Also, I just have to get this out of my head because I'll never live it down, because The Exorcist is also one of my favorite movies as well. And when you asked if there was a recording in it, and I was like, damn it, I'm going to lose my cred again if I don't answer this. There is a recording scene in The Exorcist, but it's when they discover like they're recording all the languages that Regan can speak.
Yeah,
if you remember
that's right.
That.
Yeah.
So I just had to get that in because it popped into my head and I wouldn't be able to get it out.
Yeah.
But they hear it, and also obviously he's mimicking the answers. Or not mimicking, I should say, because he's coming in first. He's like, "Are you here? Are you Cora?" or whatever the questions are, and then we hear no, and then we hear the medium's assistant, say it very clearly, and it's quite a beautiful little parroting of that. It works. It works really nicely, but we're also now getting extra stuff that they weren't writing down, I feel like, and there was actually a couple of things said that I didn't fully catch. I should have watched it with subtitles, that I don't know exactly what he said, but you said father, which is one of the words I think I missed actually, but there might have even been more that was said in this
father thing. Maybe I've just imagined that, because obviously after this we try and John Russell works out what happened to this boy. How does he work out that this boy existed and what happened to him? Does he
Well, this is the bit where I was talking earlier about the
Slows down
detective
a bit,
story
yeah.
has some leaps. I feel
Okay.
like maybe
Yeah.
maybe this isn't. Maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But at the end of this investigation, because I can't remember where. Obviously, they now have a name, so they can then go back to newspaper clippings or whatever. I actually think they go back to the place where Claire works and try to get some old files. Is that this part of the story?
Yeah, because that's when there's an older woman who works there as well.
Exactly. We get introduced. We may have met her slightly earlier, but we get introduced to her properly, and she's definitely she's trying to cover up something. This woman does not want them investigating
pretty quickly
this.
say to sorry, John. She does quickly say to John, she does say, I don't know if this was earlier, but she says, you shouldn't be living in that house. That house doesn't want people or something.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
And he goes, elaborate. And she goes, nah, see you later.
Yeah, I've said enough. I really don't think you have. I think you've just started, but okay, fine.
Yeah.
I think she puts them off the scent, but she also, it feels like she puts them off the scent in that one, or maybe not put off the scent's the wrong thing, but definitely pushes back against their investigation. But then this time they ask her who lived there, or gosh, I'm getting mixed up with the way this falls out. But I feel like that's where they find out something about Joseph. And the reason why I said earlier, I think there's some leaps in the detective logic. I feel like John Russell puts together what happened with almost 100% accuracy, all in this scene. Yeah. He's like, oh, okay, well, obviously, he was a kid that
because
got,
also where would this information have been? I know he said father potentially, but where would this information have been? Like that this is what happened to the boy. He was clearly murdered by his dad. I know, because we see a scene, don't we, which obviously is putting this together for us. Which is
whether or not he gets to see that is another question, but we get to see what happened, and that answer is revealed. He puts it together. Sorry, I don't want to speak over you. You're going to make another point, but in answer to your question that you just asked, he puts it together through a series of things. So, like, they're reading newspaper clippings, and they realize that he had a kid that went off to that got punted off to Switzerland for boarding school during the war. And they have this line where he's like, oh, his father said that his son wouldn't set foot again on American soil until the war was over, or something like that. So the kid was away, but he also went at one point, he does a lot of investigation really quickly, and he goes and looks at the will and realizes that the son is the main beneficiary of the grandfather's estate or money, but he has to get to the age of 18 before it becomes his. And if for whatever reason he doesn't reach 18, it won't go to the father, it just all goes to charity. And from those two details of like the story of being put away to Switzerland, or maybe it wasn't a boarding school, maybe it was actually to get treatment, because there's another bit of information. I think
there's like a pretense that he was to seek treatment.
That's right.
It says here,
yeah, because he was a sickly child, potentially not expected to, in those days, this is like the early 1900s, potentially like, it's not a sure thing that this kid is going to make it to 18. And he very quickly puts together this whole idea of the changeling, which, I maybe if I have some criticisms about this movie, it might have been nice if the kind of idea of what's going on with Joseph, this spirit, wasn't 100% accurate at this point, and maybe they went down a couple more dead ends,
or maybe revealed more slowly, or in a way maybe Joseph helps reveal some of this. It almost feels like John goes away and does all the hard work. So yeah, the changeling scenario isn't a supernatural scenario. It is just that boy, it's like an adopted boy came in to replace Joseph, but obviously after he was 18. And then we do see the scene where his dad murders Joseph. So he's like having a bath. Can you murder someone by just holding their legs up? in the bath?
Well, I mean, you saw it, right? So yes.
I know, I saw it. I was a bit like, just sit up, wouldn't you? I just go, stop.
I mean, he is described as a sickly kid, so that's the only thing that I could put. Yeah, like that maybe he wasn't strong enough to sit up. But we also learn in this scene as well, harking back to the rhythmic banging. The sound that he's hearing is not the boiler. It's actually the sound of little Joseph's fists on this kind of iron tub that he's bathing in, which is it's a really grisly scene actually, because of the way that it's shot. Like, you can see this is shot in the 80s. Maybe nowadays they might CG it because it's a child actor, but he just lifts up his legs, and this kid actor,
the angle as well, the way it's shot, it's like really high up in the room, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really quite uncomfortable to watch because it's two actors on screen, and obviously he's not actually holding him down and drowning him, but it's still like, anytime there's water involved and someone under it, it's like, oh, it makes me kind of a little bit uneasy, and it's fairly grisly.
And the fact that it's in the room that we've already seen, and the way we've seen the room so far is covered in cobwebs, and the fact that we can now see it like in a living, breathing, with the people mentioned in it.
Yeah, back when it was lived in. I realize how ridiculous it is for me to describe an actual scene of child murder as fairly grisly, but you know what I mean.
It's really realistic, actually. I mean, I'll tell you what. I mean, I've never really thought about it before, but if I've ever seen a child murder on film and I've gone, yeah, it looks about right.
That's fairly grisly, yeah,
fairly grisly. So yeah, obviously all that detective work is done, and then the boy who replaced Joseph when he was like younger, but obviously grew up to be 18, and then I think he's claimed, he's cured now, he's back, he's cured, 18.
Well, the idea is that he was shipped off when he was whatever age Joseph was, let's say like 8, 9, 10, something like that, and shipped off through all these years where you go through a lot of changes, obviously, as a young man. So any differences in appearance would just be described away as, he obviously his treatment has sorted whatever problems he has, and he's grown into a young man. So that's how the kind of crime how this old Carmichael expects to get away with it.
What's kind of strange is that we didn't really hear much else about, like, are we hearing about a mother? That's all. Is there much discussion about a mother?
I don't think so. I don't remember that. Obviously, the father, the relationship between the father and the son, or maybe not the relationship, but the sort of way that the changeling, if you like, sort of reveres his father, and the way that his father was seen as a great man by everyone in the public eye, becomes a big part of the finale. So we hear a lot about the dad character, but I don't remember the mum really being mentioned, but maybe there's something in the clipping. She definitely doesn't get a portrait or anything like that. We never see that.
So the next part is when John's investigation leads him to a property built on some land that was once owned by the Carmichael family. I was a bit confused at this moment. I was a bit like, where are we? What's going on?
Well, this is another big leap. This is maybe one of the biggest leaps in the detective story, because he just says, I'm going to look for it, like, land owned, and it's got to have a well. And it's like, okay, as if, like,
and then
he's buried a lot of people in wells.
That this is where, he basically becomes convinced that this is where Joseph Carmichael was buried, or has been dumped down this well, and he pretty much gets the answer he's looking for, because when he initially questions this mother, a woman who lives there, she says that her daughter has been having bad dreams, and one of the dreams is that the ghost of what sounds like Joseph is like crawling up, trying to get from beneath the floorboards. This made me think about something that I've often thought about, especially when it comes to like supernatural films and stuff like that. In fiction, how often do you find occurrences of like a ghost haunting more than one place? So this is kind of strange, isn't it? Because Joseph is haunting his family home where he was murdered, but it also seems like he's haunting the place where his body's been buried as well. And I thought that's quite an interesting thought and an interesting concept, is that a ghost, a spirit, in some way can haunt more than one place.
There's a couple of moments like that, or maybe not. Maybe there's only one other moment which we haven't got to yet that I think maybe I don't want to be the actually guy of the logic of like the story and the haunting.
Yeah.
But, you know, what can Joseph's spirit actually do? There's another bit coming up with the police guy, which seems to go against maybe the sort of rules that have been set in place. Because, yeah, it's an interesting point. Like, is Joseph in two places at once? Can he go out? Because obviously he does go out and follows a car at one point.
Where are you going, Joseph? Let's off out. Leave it alone. God.
But talk about another effective scare. Literally just that the woman who owns the house built on top of the well, just her describing her daughter's dream creeped me out in such a serious way. That performance is like, it's just a very small bit part in a much bigger movie, but the way she tells that story, I know we do get a little glimpse of a sort of watery like a little vision of what her daughter saw, which is also equally creepy. But even just her telling the story alone, and the thing that convinces this woman, because John Russell's there with a big ask, which we're about to get to, but the thing that convinces her is the night that her daughter had this dream is the same night that John Russell had the seance, which he tells her.
Okay, I've got you now. Okay, so it's almost like that awaken something there.
Yeah.
That okay. I didn't think of that connection, but there. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I've got you now. That's great though. I like that. I like the fact that sure we're asked these huge jumps in the narrative where we're supposed to believe that this connection's been made, but when the payoff is something like that, where we're like, okay, that coincidence now feels a little bit more like, it's almost like, sure, there are these huge jumps, but in a way, it's almost like John's being guided by some unknowing force that's trying to help him sort of put this together. And I did really like that. And yeah, of course, the ask is, can I smash your daughter's room to bits? And Dave, there's a well under there. I want to get down there because see what's down there. What?
Yeah, in her defense and in like the sort of believability of this story, she doesn't go for it immediately. They have they go away, and what happens actually? What's the next
think she
scene?
says, I've got your number. I'll call you if I'll have a little think about it. Yeah. And I think that's when we see the daughter again waking up, and that's when she has like she's in bed with her mum, and she wakes up and then she has another vision, doesn't she? Sees something else. So yeah, then she's like, right, get down here right now. Is that right? I don't know.
I know you're right, because like, well, ultimately it has to get to the point where he digs up the well, but I just thought that maybe there was something, and I'm blanking on what happens between those two moments when he goes away. I thought there was something that maybe happened, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not.
I took a couple of notes, but I didn't remember this one. I guess it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the daughter has another dream, and he gets to take a chainsaw. It's the most dramatic, like John Russell way of doing it. You know, it's ripping down the shelves again. Just get a chainsaw and just straight down into the middle of the floor.
I honestly think John Russell's loving this. He's like, right, I've got a nice project to get my teeth into. You know, you're like a man of, I know he's not retired because he's still working as a composer, but a man of retired age loves a good project to get their teeth into. What's that? That shed needs. I need to rip that shed down and rebuild it. Let's do it. All that patio needs to come up. He's loving it.
I don't care if there's a well under it. Let's just rip it all down.
And again, maybe this comparison's where I felt like The Ring in terms of the mystery.
Oh yeah,
detective stuff. Obviously, the connection there is that there's a well, and yeah, when John gets down there, he finds the skeleton of a kid, and this reveal of this christening medal, which we saw in the flashback not a flashback, essentially, like the scene of the boy being killed. He had this little medal around his neck. Initially I forgot about that, and when he found the medal, I was like, was Mr. T buried down here or something? What's he found? He's not getting on no plane, but he'll get into a well. But the way this medal's revealed, it kind of like, it looks like it's been reversed, doesn't it, this shot, where it kind of just comes out of the ground.
It's still pretty neat though. I mean, it's very obviously just a reverse shot, but it works. It's effective. There's that word again. I'm going to keep using it. It still works. It's a nice, creepy little moment.
Yeah. And then obviously he's already made the connection to this US senator, who I think at this point he believes is the changeling boy grown up, who replaced the dead kid grown up. And he does go and try and confront him on a runway. He's like, what's that, you getting on a plane? I'm just going to brandish a medal, swing it around, shout, I know what you know what happened, I know what happened, all this stuff.
And it's difficult to get a read on Carmichael, who's the senator's name. It's difficult to get a read on his reaction, because this is going to pay off a little bit later. Obviously, if we're going to believability, they're yards apart. There's no way he saw the detail of this, like waving around this little medallion. But you don't know whether or not to read this as he recognizes that medallion and he's like, oh, what? Or if he doesn't see it, or just like dismisses it, or just thinks he's crazy. Like, it's very difficult to get a read on exactly what's going through Carmichael's head about this guy at this part. And this is one of the reasons why the ending is so effective, which I'll hold off.
So obviously he reveals that he's got a christening medal of his own around his neck. But this next sequence where he asks the pilot or someone on the plane to call this police officer. I don't know. The way it went from here, I kind of thought, okay, so he's going to reach out to him and maybe try but he doesn't. He's almost sending this police officer around to John to just knock it on the head, to just completely almost scare him off in a way, isn't it?
It doesn't. See, I don't know if I fully understand this bit yet, or the motivations of every character in this next bit, because he's seen the medallion on the runway. He's looked at his own. We know as the audience, and he knows that he has it. But he sends DeWitt, I think is the police chief's name, or whatever rank he is, I'm not sure, to John Russell's house. And he said, like, knowing that John has this medallion, because that's one of the lines that the police guy, that's DeWitt, uses. It's like, you have something that belongs to Mr. or Senator Carmichael, and he wants it back.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like that's okay. That makes sense on its own. It doesn't make sense later, though, to me, when, and I don't want to jump around, but at the end it's insinuated very heavily, and I think my read on the end is Carmichael doesn't know what he is, I don't think, according to the end. And we're getting close. So this bit, the motivations here don't make a ton of sense on my read of the ending, but maybe your read's different, and we'll get to it in a second.
I think that does make sense, though, because I think there's a moment when John kind of accuses or tries to explain to Carmichael what he thinks happens, and he gets quite angry, Carmichael, doesn't he, saying accusing his adoptive father of murdering somebody. So perhaps he doesn't know, or perhaps he's in denial.
I guess the thing that doesn't make sense for me is then why is he asking for the medallion back? Like, I don't know, maybe he's just like surprised that there's two. He only thought there was one. I don't know, but it just, there's a couple of question marks.
But so essentially the police officer attempts to like intimidate him and retrieve the medal. When John basically says no, he says, well, I'll either come back, you can either give it to me now, or I'll come back with a search warrant and we'll tear this place apart. He says something like that, didn't he?
And
obviously
John Russell says, that's my job, tearing places apart. Yeah. I'll help you.
You what? What do you want to do? Rip this floor up? Yeah, we'll get on it. Me and you'll do it. Yeah, it's fine.
Come, I'll be here in an hour. Let's go for it.
John Russell's changing rooms. He's like 20 DIY SOS. Let's smash this place to bits. But also I get the impression that John Russell feels like he's got nothing to lose in this scenario. Like, he's lost his family. He's got this big house. He's trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. It doesn't matter what happens as long as he kind of unearths the mystery, I suppose.
because this very next thing that he does, and this is coming into the scare that you were speaking about earlier, the mirror scare. But the very next thing that he does, it looks to me like he's taken his medallion and it looks like he's going to try and find a hiding place for it, which kind of seems a bit redundant when the guys just said, we're going to tear the place apart looking for it. But that's what I thought he was going to do first time I watched it. And then we have this mirror scare moment where, quite similar to the window, I guess, earlier, just exploding outwards in this really isolated little pane. The center of the mirror just explodes outwards, actually gets a bit of glass lodged in John Russell's neck.
Oh, yeah. Which he yanks out straight away, obviously. He's like,
yeah, of course. Yeah. No YouTube video on how to do that. But we see, like, and this is the bit you were asking about earlier. Do we think that John saw this, or is this just for us, the audience? But DeWitt's sort of bloodied face is right in the center of the mirror, and we then learn via a phone call, because Claire was just there. We didn't say that. Claire just left when DeWitt was in there, and she phones from a payphone and says, it's just happened, I just saw it. DeWitt's car, like, completely without touching any other car, there hasn't been a collision, just flipped, and we see that it's the exact mirror of the mirror.
This is effective. His is sort of like a death mask, which is pretty terrifying. There's a big hole in the windscreen. He's completely upside down and dead, but eyes wide and mouth agape. It's it was effective. I was affected by that because I kind of like knew what had happened. I was like, oh my god. So I put all those pieces together, but it really did take that phone call to really like hammer it home for me, where I was like, okay, that is pretty effective. And now it almost feels like the next step that Joseph is willing to take, even though, as we mentioned, he's not a violent spirit. It doesn't seem at this point, but it seems like obviously he's taken a step now in order to, and it feels like they're in the end game of trying to draw. Because what is his goal? To draw Carmichael out and be able to.
Well, this is what I was hinting at earlier when I said, like, if you actually try to get the logic of what the rules are of what Joseph is capable of, because if he is capable of, and I'm not being this guy, but just as a storyteller, it doesn't bother me, but there is an argument to be made for, like, if he can get out and flip DeWitt's car, why can't he reach Carmichael in the plane, for instance, or but I'm not gonna get. I don't want to be that guy. It's just like if I try to explain it away, I don't really have a good explanation other than it just works for the story and it's really satisfying story, and I'm fine with it. But yeah,
it definitely works. But then I also think, I'm glad it kind of happened off screen, because I feel like if we saw DeWitt getting into his car and he was driving and suddenly saw a figure and then he like swerved and perhaps that wouldn't have been as effective. The fact is kind of like happens off screen, we don't get to see exactly what happened, again makes it effective. Pretty effective again.
It's so effective.
So yeah, after that, Carmichael agrees to meet with John, and this is where John basically tells him essentially what he thinks has happened. What he's doing here is he's doing a Murder, She Wrote moment where he's just going, this is what I think happened, and I'm going to tell you all of this and see what your take on it.
This is Columbo moment.
This is Columbo moment, yeah. And that's when Carmichael basically says, how dare you accuse my dad of murder?
And the way that this has been played, sorry to speak over you, but like I think this is a really interesting scene, because the way that this has been played up until this point, my interpretation at least, was that Carmichael knew what he was. Mm-hmm. But his reaction here is so honest that you realize he had no idea. As far as he was concerned, he is Joseph Carmichael. And that is that's the kind of moral gray area that's so interesting about this ghost. And I mean ghost as like the ghost of what the father did to Joseph, rather than the literal spirit that we're talking about here, the ghost of the story that came before. That's what makes this so satisfying, is like, it's not just an obvious villain or anything. Like, it's the sins of the father type deal. It's like one step removed, and you sort of feel a little bit heartbroken when, like, or I did, when you realize that this guy who you've sort of seen as a bit of a villain up until this point actually is clueless about it and is learning this really horrible detail, like, just there and then. And I think that John Russell as well, like, sort of sees that too, because he's like, his performance is kind of like pity, you know. He's not there. He thinks he's there to be blackmail. Carmichael thinks he's there to blackmail him, and he's ready to write a check. And he's like, I'm not here. Like, that's not what I'm here for.
He does say. He says, I don't want any. I got loads, mate. I just bought this house. You know that.
Yeah, I know. Look at the size of my house. It's bigger than yours. But yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons it's so satisfying and effective. There's that word again. Like, it just all wraps up quite nicely, even though there's a couple of question marks and a couple of leaps. That is a really satisfying little moment, because it just kind of pulls the rug from under you a little bit.
And the way that sorry, John, the way that John leaves the medal and the copy of the seance recording, he leaves it there and apologizes. It is honestly like he's okay. I've taken this as far as I can. I wipe my hands of it now. I guess it's in a way it kind of must be like an ending for him, but of course the ghost of Joseph has other ideas. And
I feel sorry.
No, go on.
Well, I feel like that we did speak about this as well. Like, what is Joseph's end goal? And I feel that John is just as clueless as well. Like, I feel like he kind of takes on. You insinuated really well earlier, or hinted towards it earlier, that he wanted, almost like, was gleefully taking part in this detective thing because it distracted him from his grief. But then I think with, like, learning what he did about the murdered child, like, obviously brought that home in a big way. And I think to him and what happened, and I think that he desperately, maybe one of the reads on why he's so stoic and so, like, not typically scared as characters generally are in ghost stories, is because he's genuinely, like, feels for this kid, because he puts the story together so quickly. So he wants to do something for him, but he's also kind of clueless as to what it is that he needs to do. So I kind of see that moment at the end where, like, I'm not looking for money. Here's the seance. I haven't made any copies. Here's your medallion. I'm giving you everything, and I'm wiping my hands of it. Is just kind of a bit of exasperating for him as well. He's like, I don't know what to do, but this is all I can do, is just make you aware of what happened.
It's like, I've done enough. My part is done. Whatever you choose to do with this information is now your choice, but I'm gonna go back to my haunted house and just chill out. But yeah, perhaps he thinks that might be the end of it in a way, but no, because when Claire goes to the house to find John, she gets involved in a pretty terrifying chase sequence. We get another one of those POV shots as well, this time from, like, with it actually as if the camera was on the wheelchair. And yeah, so she goes up. What did she go up to the room for? Didn't she just hear some noise and then
she hears his voice? So she hears John's voice. Joseph is mimicking his voice somehow. And she, in exactly the same way, it actually completely bookends the running water scene from the start. You know, she hears his voice progressively deeper or higher, I guess, into the house. So she goes up the stairs and continues all the way up to the attic room. And there's
I think she says, I don't want to come up there. Doesn't she say that?
Exactly. Yeah. Even when you just said it there, it, like, made it kind of give me, like, goosebumps again, because it's such a heartbreaking moment, because she thinks that he's in there, and she's just stopped at this door, and she's like, please don't make me go up here. And it's just, oh my gosh, even now, even thinking about it, it's really, really effective.
It's the way that so the wheelchair, obviously she looks at it, but then it, like, turns towards her. That's like a bit like
what a moment.
A bit like I was trying to think of something else with wheels that moves, Brum. Do you remember Brum? It's
exactly
like,
Brum.
That's a lovely little car in there. Oh, there's Brum. Oh, he's always like when Brum chases down the robbers or something. That's how this wheelchair acts. It just it just comes at her.
Oh man, just like Brum. Yeah, I mean we didn't speak about this actually. There's a moment earlier. It's probably my favorite moment in the whole movie, and I totally forgot to mention it. Where they're speaking, and it's the first time that Claire sees the wheelchair move. Like it's just at the top of the stairs, and it like sort of creaks. I can't remember if she actually sees it moving or if it's just sitting there. But she walks out and just like immediately sees it, and it's this fantastically terrifying moment when you're just like, what is she seeing? The actress who plays Claire, whose name I'm already forgotten, does this so exceptionally well. It's absolutely my favorite shot in the whole movie. But just to say, like, the wheelchair is such an iconic image. It really, it stands up with, I think, a lot of the kind of prestige horror that you were talking about earlier. Like just this image of an empty child's wheelchair is so like eerie and unsettling. It's a wonderfully iconic image, and it's used very, very effectively.
Because it just tells such a story, doesn't it? It tells such a tragic story. You see that empty wheelchair, you understand that this is a ghost story. Just by looking at that, you're like, okay, so it's a story about the spirit of a disabled in some way. And obviously when you find out as a child as well, there's even more of that tragedy. Is the shot you're talking about when she's looking up the stairs and John kind of comes to her face, doesn't he, and puts his hand on her face and then looks to see what she's looking at? Is that the one?
And it's she's just walking out of the room, and you've kind of got a sense of the geography that she's walking past the bottom of the staircase, and you just like something catches her out the corner of her eye, and we don't see it, we're just on her. And she just like pushes herself up against the wall and is looking straight up, and it's held there for seconds and seconds. It feels like an eternity because we are not seeing what she's seeing, but she looks just so incredibly terrified. And another like feature of the wheelchair, and I'm not sure if that wheelchair was like an actual wheelchair from the early 1900s, if that was indicative of it, but this iconic, or whether it was like made for the movie, I'm not sure, but it looks occupied is the only way that I can say it. Even from the moment you first see it in the covered in cobwebs, it's got this sort of presence that looks like someone sitting in it, even though no one's ever sitting in it. It's
sort of like got a weight to it, isn't it? You're like a bit like
it's oh gosh, I really, even talking about it now, I'm getting so excited about it. It's gosh, it's such a good movie. Can you tell that I'm going to be rating it highly later?
And obviously, so the wheelchair chases after Claire, ferociously, and keeps stopping like the top of. It's almost like taunting her in a way, it felt like. And then when she goes flying down the stairs, rolls down the stairs, essentially, it throws itself down the stairs after her. And sort of and there's this great shot when it lands next to her, the wheels are spinning and she's sort of like sobbing. And then John Russell comes into shot and she's scared of him because she's just so shook up by the whole scenario.
The first time I watched it, I wasn't sure if she was going to survive that fall, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to lose Claire. So
I think when anybody falls downstairs, you think that could possibly be it for that person, but no, it doesn't kill her. And then, well, John arrives. He gets her out, and then he goes back in. Because he's got, because she's like, you're not going to go back in there, are you? He's like, I got to.
I'm John Russell. I go into places. If there's a dead body skeleton down a well, you better believe I'm going down that well.
Don't put a barrier in front of somewhere I want to go, right? So I'll tear it down.
You'll tear it down. Exactly.
I'll tear it right down.
Nothing gets in the way of John Russell when he wants something. So he storms back in, and the house is like starts to shake, because this is what I was saying earlier. This sort of almost imagining it like a toddler sort of temper tantrum. Joseph is angry, and he's shaking the whole house, and there's like a big chandelier that's like swinging backwards and forwards, and he actually runs up the stairs, and he gets so far, but one of the doors on the landing like blows open really violently, knocks him off the banister, and he falls like a story, and is kind of a bit out of it. And that's when we see this wonderful shot of the banister all the way down these 3 floors, like just lighting on fire. Which is kind of great because Joseph is going to bring this place down. I don't want to go. I could just go through the whole thing. I don't want to. I want in case you've got anything to say about any of the points.
But yeah, it is incredibly. It is scary. It's terrifying. And again, moments that perhaps, looking at it through the standpoint of someone who's seen a lot of modern supernatural horror movies, feels like stuff we've seen before. But here in this film, it all feels so genuine, and it all feels like so, I guess, like fresh. It's almost like, and shocking, the way that this film has the pacing of the film and the way this mystery has kind of been unearthed. When something like this happens, it is sort of shocking because you're so in that mindset of finding out every detail, as John Russell does, that when something like this happens, you're like, oh shit, Joseph's pissed.
He really is.
Simultaneously is when Senator Carmichael is like looking at both of the medals, almost like putting the pieces together from everything that John Russell's told him. And that is when is his like table shaking that he's like,
when he goes to Carmichael's office, he has this really prominent portrait of his dad, which just kind of, it tells us how much he reveres this man. And to learn that his dad is like, not only is he not who he thought he was, but his dad is obviously not who he thought he was either, because he murdered this child. He's like he's like devastated, but he's just fixated on this portrait, which is rocking just along with the house, and we're cutting lightning fast between back and forth. And this is like one of the biggest kind of what the fuck moments in it, is because he's like so fixated on this portrait, he sort of, I don't even know, he like sort of is transported into the burning house. And
so in the Wikipedia description it says his astral body.
So he like astrally projects
himself into the burning house. Because I was a bit confused by that initially. I was like, he got there fast.
But and like, and John sees him as well. So like this astral projection of Carmichael starts walking up the stairs further and further into this burning building, and gets all the way up to the attic room, which is so infamous now at this point. We've seen in so many ways. There's a lovely little transition shot actually where we're behind him in this tracking shot, and he walks it through the burning. It's like at the top of a little small staircase from the top landing, and he's in the burning little staircase, this final little walk, and then he just emerges into the room as it was back on the night when his dad killed him. So a sort of out of the burning modern, like decrepit house into as it was, and it's not burning anymore. So the transition's really neat.
The reason that happens is because he witnesses the murder now, doesn't he? He witnesses the
it all comes all comes out in the wash.
All comes out in the wash, and he collapses. So he has a heart attack, doesn't he? Like the astral version of him has a heart attack, but obviously the real version of him has
the real version of him has the heart attack. So
that's right.
I think that's the interpretation is that he is there, he's projected into the house, and he sees it all. So in his final moments, he learns the truth about himself and his dad, and it is it's not a happy. It's not like seeing the bad guy get his comeuppance. It's a tragic end for him.
Because that's the thing. Like again, in another sort of film like this, where there was a murder at the center of it, it would be like there was a villain who needed to be apprehended in order for the ghost to be at peace. But it's not like that. It's almost like just How would you
There isn't
describe
any
it? It's
guilty
just
part. Like the only guilty
no,
party is the
the
dad,
dad.
and he's
dead.
not around. So just everyone is a victim, and and Joseph gets closure, but it does feel. I don't know. I'm searching for the right word, and I want to say bittersweet. I don't know if that's not the right word, but I can't think of something better. It just it's morally great is the only way I can put it. It's like it's a weird ending, but
John Russell lives, which I think is important. I would have been disappointed if John Russell ended up dying. I think I guess Joseph's ghost is at peace, and in a way, this has probably allowed John Russell to be at peace, or to at least move on to the next step of whatever his grief is. But obviously, he hasn't got a house anymore because it's burnt down. And we do see the burnt wheelchair in amidst the ruins of the mansion. And I think the last shot, it has the music box lullaby again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the little every horror movie's got, every ghost story especially has got to have that little sting in the tail. So
I'm like, don't open the music box in the haunted room. Just leave it. I don't want to hear it.
It's going to be like, Joseph will return in the Changeling 2.
Yeah. Joseph will return, and he's angrier. And he's got an electric wheelchair now, and he's coming for you. He's coming for you. You're running down the street. Shit. Joseph, no. So that's the end of that. So usually at this point we do the name game, but I don't want to tread on anyone's toes. That tends to be what Luke and Andy get involved with the most. So I'm going to do a little trivia corner trivia. Let's call it a hidden trivia room covered in cobwebs.
I am sitting in the corner right now, so this is trivia corner.
You are, exactly. Come to the top of the stairs into my trivia room and answer questions posed to you. Write your answers down on a piece of paper, scribble them with a pencil.
Admire my cobwebs.
Well, there we go. Just a couple of little trivia questions I'll ask you. So, actors Trish Van Devere and George C. Scott were married in real life.
Were they?
In their 8 years of marriage, how many movies before this one had they made together?
Oh man, in their 8 years of God, and I don't know where this falls in the 8 years. So I did not know this. So I'm just going to be guessing.
I think this is right at the end of their 8 years of marriage.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, in their then 8 years marriage. So up to this point, they've been married for 8 years.
I mean, made movies. So movies that they both appeared in together.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to guess. I don't think it's one a year, but I feel like it's going to be high. So I'm going to say 6.
7. Incredibly close. I'll give you a point for that.
Half a point.
There's not half a point, quarter of a point. Yeah. There's not going to be a league of ranking unless the trivia corner becomes a regular thing. Maybe it could be. Maybe it could be new. Okay. And next one. Which director included this movie on his top 11 scariest horror films of all time list? I'll give you a clue. It's a big name director, not a horror movie director.
Big name director, not horror movie director. The first director that popped into my head, and I don't know if this is going to be right. Big name? Maybe he's not big name. I'm just going to say it because he was the first one that popped into my head, even before you gave the hint. So I'm going to say Edgar Wright. Okay,
no, incorrect. But I'll give you a better. That's a great guess because I think this is exactly the kind of film Edgar Wright would like. I bet he does. Let's say a lot older than Edgar Wright, but still alive.
But still alive. Big name director. I mean, the biggest name in directing is Spielberg. So why not go with that? I don't know.
Unfortunately, it's Martin Scorsese.
Oh, Scorsese. Interesting.
Scorsese loves The Changeling.
This is when I think Spielberg arguably has made horror movies, so that was a bad answer. Never mind. Well, good to know.
I don't know. Unless there's multiple, I should have done a multiple choice answer to this because some of these are so out there. But I'll try and give you some clues.
Okay.
Director Peter Medak said he was initially intimidated by stories of actor George C. Scott being difficult to work with, but the only trouble he ever had with him was on the set when a production manager accidentally knocked over what? Now, I guess it was
Oh,
wait, sorry. I'll just give you a clue just because it's a bit vague. It was something that George C. Scott was obviously using to pass the time.
oh, okay. And I mean, obviously, I'm guessing it's not the big tin cone from the seance. Something that he knocked it over and he was passing the time. I mean, like George C. Scott, God, he was probably like whittling something, or I don't know. My brain says a guitar.
Oh, yeah. These are two.
Knocked over a guitar.
It was a chessboard. He'd
Oh.
been playing against himself for 2 weeks. So apparently, when he knocked it over, he lost his shit.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. 2-week game. Come on, imagine someone deleting your like Elden Ring save.
Elden Ring save, yeah. Got to level up all over again.
Yeah,
Maroons
couldn't handle it.
I'm
not doing great here. I've got half point.
Oh yeah, sorry. This one's maybe I'll do simple true or false ones after this for the next edition of the Trivia Corner.
I mean, I'm into it, but
this one's just a yes or no. So, did George C. Scott learn how to play the piece of classical music that he plays on the piano for the college students?
No.
See, I said no, but I thought no, but it's yes. Apparently, he did.
Really?
It definitely cuts away when he starts playing it, doesn't it?
Yeah, you never see.
You don't see his hands.
I would have never said yes, but there you go. Maybe.
So what it seemed they did was they got him to learn it, but as soon as he started playing it, they just went, "Don't show his hands."
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm actually playing it. You should show my hands. No, not interested. Not interested. There we go. So you got half a point out of 5. If this is the first edition of Ben's Trivia Corner, you're top of the leaderboard.
Okay, I'll take it. For a very brief amount of time, I am at the top.
Yeah.
The glory is
who knows?
staggering.
I don't know if this is going to take over Name Game. Probably won't. So, unfortunately, but you may stay at the top of the leaderboard forever.
Don't take my performance as indicative of the quality of the thing. Yeah.
He used to do true or false all the time, but Luke was far more generous. And whatever answer I said, he used to say, "Yes, correct." we got 5 out of 5. So yeah, I guess now we need to rate the film, rate good or rate bad. Obviously, we do a standard A to F sort of rating. I'm gonna let you go first. I think you're gonna go quite high, aren't you? Because you've been.
I am, and anyone who is a fan of the show, I feel like, and I don't remember all my ratings of the movies. I think I've been on the show 3, maybe 4 times at this stage. I don't remember exactly how many times, but I feel like I always rate fairly highly because I come in and it's generally because it's a movie that I'm a fan of, and it just so happens that I'm a fan of this. I think, I mean, how many times have I used the word effective in describing this? It really genuinely frightened me in places. It really genuinely creeped me out. Yes, there are a few moments. I think the detective story makes some incredible leaps of logic to get to where it needs to go, but it never feels like I'm never rolling my eyes. I'm never doing anything like that. It sort of works, and in a way it becomes interesting. It becomes interesting to have a ghost story where the lead character is not scared of ghosts. It just doesn't happen. Like, it shouldn't work, but it does work. I am going to, I don't know, A to F. I'm trying to work this into like something more like a 5-star, which is kind of how my brain works. And honestly, I think I would give this a solid 4 stars. So does that equate to a B+ or an A-? I'm not sure, but that's where I want to go for.
Yeah, I reckon. I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but I think from me personally, I was going to go for a B+. And I think you liked it probably slightly more than me.
Okay.
So I reckon an A-.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm definitely more of a stars type guy, and my initial rating of this was 3.5 stars. But as often happens when discussing films on this podcast, I kind of learn to appreciate more or appreciate less a film based on our discussion. And I think I appreciate this one more. But yeah, sorry, I jumped in there. So A-.
No, it's good. I asked for help. I'm glad that you bailed me out of that because I wasn't sure where I was going. And I would say I'll take. I'm happy to sit on A minus because it would be, in that star rating that I was imagining, 4.1, 4.2. If I could go there, and that's like around about an A minus. I really, really dig it a lot, and getting to watch it again. Because this is probably the only I think this is the second time I've watched it. It's it was a rewatch, but just this is it. And I tend to watch movies quite a lot. I will be watching it again at some point down the line. I loved it last night when I watched it, and speaking to you tonight has got me all re-enthused about it again, because it really does, it is fun to talk about. No, A minus. I'm very happy with that. That's my score.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for a B plus, just because this was the first time I'd seen it, and it's kind of crazy, really, when I think about it. The fact that I hadn't seen it before, maybe just because I didn't know enough about it, and the title was a little bit deceiving for me. I kind of thought you see that title and you kind of think, okay, I know what kind of film that is. I know what it's about. Maybe I'll get around to it one day. But I'm glad I did, and I love it when I discover like a new favorite. So I'm saying B plus now. It may be one that kind of grows with time, and I'd learn to appreciate it even more. But I'd highly recommend it if this is one of those horror movies from that sort of prestige horror era, as we mentioned, that you haven't seen, because it's
we have completely spoiled it at this point for you. But if you haven't seen it,
spoiled a 40-year-old film, we can get away with that. Wonderful. So yeah, we're very positive on that, which is good. There we go. So that is it. Next week we're going to be watching a movie called Blood Hook, which I think is one of Luke's suggestions. It's like
it's a trauma movie, I think, isn't it?
Is it a trauma movie? Okay, I've never seen that one either.
I think it's on the trauma catalog. Yeah,
a new movie for me as well. So thanks so much for joining me, John. Where can our listeners find more of your stuff?
I've got a website, johncrinan.com, JOHNCRINAN. I've been really relatively quiet recently on socials and on the website. I haven't put anything out. I think the last, and even in podcasts, this is I sort of haven't been on many podcasts recently. I've been fairly busy working on some stuff behind the scenes. I've got a book that I'm working on and a few other things that are not quite ready to announce yet, but will be soon, which I'm very excited about. But I have started an email newsletter, and that's like the one thing that I'm putting out. So there's a sign up link on my website, and I'm on socials at John Crinan, but again, not particularly active. I share a lot of random, really heavy music in my Instagram stories, if that's your thing. But yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Also, if you enjoy listening to John's voice, he does have a podcast called The John Crinan Show, just called The John Crinan Show, isn't it? A legacy podcast, let's call it. Something that's still available, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
What happened to my voice then?
Yeah, the John Crinan podcast. It's kind of been. I recorded that some time ago now, a couple of years ago, and then I made the move and I was a co-host over in the Great Writer Share. I spoke to creatives and people who make things just about making stuff, and it was it's all still online, and Chianti as well is all still online, and the Great Writer Share that I was the host on is all out there too, and I've been a guest on a bunch of stuff. I'm sure it's all out there.
So
still.
There are what you're saying is there are hours upon hours of your lovely voice available for people to consume, as they so see fit.
Yeah, by all means, if this is something that you want to hear more of, I can't understand why you would, but it's all out there for you.
Most
Enjoy.
Definitely. Wonderful. Thank you, John. Also, obviously, John's been on the show a few times before. So the episode most recently was the Species episode from March 2021. Hunt that down if you didn't hear that one. And as we mentioned before, the quiz episode that where we went up against a nice Chianti, which I think was at the tail end of 2020.
It was around about Christmas. Yeah, it was around about Christmas. 2020 or 2021. I feel it was 2021, wasn't it? No,
because I think 2021 was
Yeah, sorry, 2020. Oh, this illustrates just how much my timeline is out. Yeah, of course it was 2020.
The time vacuum.
Yeah.
So yeah, go and check that out because that was a laugh, if anything else. So yeah, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, become a patron over at patreon.com/horror hangout. I'd like to thank all of our patrons on there: Julia Bilgren, Leslie Carlo, Wendy Muller, Ollie Child, Lane Spencer, Toby Miller, Laura Kendrick, Stephen Christopher, Ben Scaife, and Pazuzu, and of course, patron against his will, John Crinan. So thanks to Kovac Cameron for our theme music. Thanks to Acast for hosting the show. Please consider giving us a rating and a review, and head over to the Facebook group Horror Hangout Board of Advisors for more. But thanks very much to John Crinan for being a right horror dude.
Thank you, Ben. It was fun.
Until next time, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh.
Why should anyone object?
Of course, it does need a lot of work. Here.
Wow. We're still not together on the offbeats. It was too loud, too rhythmic.
Oh. Well, what was that all about?